Public notice of this meeting pursuant to the Open Public Meetings Act has been given by the board secretary on April 6th in the following manner. Posted notice on the school bulletin board at the administration building, transmitted to the Courier Post, Philadelphia Inquirer, and the clerk of Cherry Hill Township. Call this meeting to order and please join me in standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mrs. Sugars, turning it to you for roll call.
Mrs. Arroyo.
Here.
Mrs. Stratton. Here. Mrs. Fleischer.
Here.
Ms. Friedel.
Here.
Mr. Mayor.
Here.
Dr. Rude.
Here.
Ms. Stern.
Here.
Mrs. Tong.
Here.
Mr. Avadia.
Here. Second. All right, going to turn it over to Dr. Malash. No board recognitions, you say?
No, presentation.
Then we have our presentation. I'm going to turn that over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Avadia. I'm very excited for this evening's presentation. Mrs. Wethington and Dr. Mahan and Dr. Morton have been working with our colleagues, the team at Hanover Research during the course of this academic year. So I'm very excited about the presentation that they're going to deliver this evening. We're going to hear quite a bit about the research and the analysis they did of the information that's been provided, as well as the survey that was put out to the community. This is the first in a number of steps that we will talk about this spring and continued action as we move into the next school year and beyond. So Mrs. Wethington, I'm going to turn it over to you to do the introductions for our friends from Hanover, and then we'll jump right in.
Thank you, Dr. Malash. So tonight with us, we have James Cornegie, Julie Shenfield, Julie, and Dr. Ann Spear, and they will be conducting the presentation to review the equity scorecard that we worked with them to develop, as well as the equity survey.
All right, thank you so much for that introduction. We're very excited to be here. So I'm Julie Shenfield. I'm the relationship director for your partnership with Hanover. So my main role is to make sure that you are maximizing, or the district is maximizing the relationship that they have with Hanover. We also have James Cornegie, who is your main content director, who'll be walking you through the projects we've done so far, and Dr. Ann Spear, who's a member of our senior research team. So just to kind of give you a little bit of background before we dive into the work that we've been doing, Hanover is a customized research firm, and we're based in Arlington, Virginia, but we have employees spread throughout the nation. Our K-12 team has a wide range of practical experience, as our team is comprised of former high school and charter school principals, instructional coaches, data analysts, and teachers. We currently partner with over 350 school districts, in addition to multiple state departments of education, independent schools, and educational services agencies. And through our partnerships, we provide customized research for districts through a sequential research queue based on their individual priorities and needs. So in addition to that, district leaders also get access to our Hanover digital portal. And in that portal, we have over 1,300 redacted reports, in addition to toolkits and recorded Hanover sponsored events, such as our ongoing webinar series and our Superintendent Leadership Council. So James, you can go to the next slide. Thank you. And this slide, I just wanted to briefly highlight some of the key applications and services we utilize when partnering with districts. And this will be kind of what James dives into in a minute on the specific work that we've been doing with Cherry Hill. But to support these initiatives, we have an amazing research team that has over 200 analysts and 35 PhDs with expertise in all methodologies, educational leadership, educational policy, literacy, teacher education, special education, and communication. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to James so he can talk about the specific work we've been doing with Cherry Hill around equity.
Well, thank you all for having us tonight. I'm excited to be here and to present some of the work we've been able to partner with the Cherry Hill leadership on. We've mainly focused on 2 projects so far related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. The first is the Equity Data Dashboard and Scorecard, and then followed that up with a Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Survey. And so first we'll look at the Equity Dashboard. To just briefly review some of the data that we've incorporated, you can see here we looked at about 4 school years worth of data from 2016 to 2020. And to look at that data a little bit more specifically, these were the particular outcomes that we looked at when we were completing the equity dashboard. So you can see there are outcomes there like student absenteeism, suspension, course failure, as well as academic measures like state assessment proficiency, AP coursework, GPA rankings, as well as participation in programs like gifted and talented program participation, special education participation, and things like that. When we look at work around equity from a quantitative perspective, we use a representation index. The representation index helps us identify disproportionalities in the data. We compare the share of students in a particular group among students who meet a certain outcome with the share of that group's share of the overall population. So to give you an example, since that can be a little bit complicated, if we look here at an example of Asian students who have participated in the gifted and talented program, if we see that 33% of Asian students are among the gifted students and 33% of Asian students represent the 33% of the total student body, we would get a representation index of 1, meaning they are proportionally represented based on the amount of the student body population that they represent. If we looked at it in this underrepresentation example, we can see that 33% of Asian students participated in gifted programs compared to 60% of Asian students among all of the student body. That would give us a representation index of 0.6, indicating that Asian students in this example are underrepresented. We looked at it from an overrepresented perspective, and we flipped these numbers and said that 60% of Asian students represented the gifted student population, and they represented 33% of the overall student body. This would give us a representation index of 1.8, meaning that they are overrepresented for this particular category. These are all just examples to help explain how we calculate a representation index, and we'll look at some specific examples applicable to Cherry Hill in just a moment. Looking first at ELA proficiency, broadly speaking, we see that Black students and Hispanic students are underrepresented among students who are proficient in ELA state assessments. Comparatively, we see that Asian students are overrepresented in this group. So looking again at the representation index, we see that Hispanic students have a representation index of 0.7 amongst ELA proficiency metrics. Compare that to white students who have an ELA, who have a representation index of 1.1 for the same metric. Again, here at the bottom, you can see how we did the math to come up with a particular representation index. Looking at math outcomes, we see similar discrepancies in the data. So we see that Black students and Hispanic students are underrepresented among the students who are proficient in math assessments compared to Asian students who again are overrepresented in this particular metric. You can see in this example, Hispanic students within Cherry Hill Public Schools have a representation index of 0.6 regarding math proficiency. We see this too in high school courses. So if we look at algebra and geometry proficiency, we can see that Hispanic students have a representation index of 0.5 and 0.4 in algebra and geometry, Black students have a representation index of 0.4 and 0.5, compared to Asian students who have representation indices of 1.4 in both algebra and geometry. Finally, white students have a representation index of 1.1 in both of those metrics. And again, this is just an example of how we do the math to come up with that representation index. Looking at program access. So if you remember the data we looked at, the last category I reviewed was around participation in things like special education programs or gifted and talented programs. This is looking at an example from the gifted and talented program. Hispanic students are underrepresented in that particular program, whereas white students, Asian students, and Asian Indian students are overrepresented. So again, looking at that representation index, we see that Hispanic students have a representation index of 0.5 for participation in the gifted and talented program for the year 2019. Moving on to the scorecard itself, Cherry Hill's district leadership has access to this interactive dashboard. So I'll show you a few ways that the district can use this information based on the representation indices that we just reviewed. You can see here at the top that we can segment using different metrics. So we can look at this data based on the school year, the individual school, or the grade level. For this particular example, you can see that we're looking at all of the data available for all of those metrics. And then within the actual dashboard, you can see that we've highlighted here the representation index for geometry proficiency. For Black students and Hispanic students, it is 0.3 compared to Asian students where it is 1.6. Moving on to the equity outcomes section of the dashboard. Again, we see that we've got these segmented variables we can look at the top. This is different than the representation index in that it shows us overall proficiency for those outcomes on the left-hand side. So again, looking at the geometry proficiency, we can see that Hispanic and Black students both had 13% proficiency rates amongst those demographic populations, compared to Asian students who had 62% proficiency in geometry metrics. The third part of the equity data dashboard that the Cherry Hill district leadership can utilize now is this side-by-side comparison. You can see here we can segment by different variables again, and in this case, we're looking at math proficiency and we're looking at grade level. So down at the bottom of this chart, we can see the different grade levels, 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade, and so on. From there, we can distinguish how we would like to classify Group A and Group B. So in this particular case, you can see for Group A, we've selected multiple schools. So for this example, we selected 4 random schools, compared to Group B, where we have selected all schools within Cherry Hill Public Schools. And then we've decided to further segment by race and ethnicity, which in this case, we've looked at Black students for both Group A and Group B. And then we've also looked at non-LEP students for both Group A and Group B. From there, we can look at the trends, again, in math proficiency by grade level, comparing these 4 schools to the district as a whole. And we can see, for example, that in 3rd grade, the proficiency rates are very similar. They're both around 48%. However, once we get to 4th and 5th grade, we can see that there's a pretty precipitous drop between all schools and the 4 schools we've selected on the left side. So this is an example of some of the information that can be used from this dashboard. The district can look at why there are discrepancies or differences in these schools' average compared to these particular 4 schools. So looking at all of that data, we do come up with recommendations for the district to consider. The first there is to conduct a root cause analysis. So explore a little bit further why these gaps exist. Generally speaking, we recommend a mixed methodology approach, including qualitative research, survey research, and secondary research. Cherry Hill Public Schools have obviously already conducted a survey, so they've got a great start on this first recommendation. The second there is that gaps in reading and math start in 3rd grade, and that's particularly pronounced amongst economically disadvantaged students and students of color. So focusing on those early outcomes is important for the district to consider. The third there is to examine discipline policies and to evaluate those for potential biases. Economically disadvantaged students, students of color, and students who participate in LEP and IEP programs are more likely than their peers to have disciplinary infractions, and they're also more likely to be suspended for those infractions. And then lastly, continuing to monitor the gaps. We can update both the DEI survey and this dashboard annually with new data so that we can identify and examine longitudinal trends in the diversity, equity, and inclusion work at the district. Moving on to the DEI survey, again, a quick overview of the methodology. We look at segmented results, so we can look at the results based on role, school affiliation, race and ethnicity, or other factors. And then we use a system called Qualtrics to send out this link and to gather the raw data before we move into an analysis. This is a sample overview of the respondents who were at the district, who responded to the survey. You can see here that the bulk of the respondents came from these parent participants and student participants. 18% of our responses came from staff members, and you can see here on the right the breakdown of those respondents. The majority of staff respondents came from classroom teachers. Looking at the district's overall support, participants generally view Cherry Hill as supportive of different cultures and religions, and many but fewer feel that the district provides support for sexual orientation, economic background, and gender identities. So if you look at this graph here, you can see that 88% of respondents either agree or strongly agree that the school supports students and families from all different cultures, compared to 76% of respondents who agree or strongly agree that the school supports students and families with different gender identities and expressions. So even though this rating is lower than this rating, these are all very positive results because more than 3/4 of participants feel that the district is supportive in all of these different diverse areas. In terms of district diversity, staff generally feel that the district lacks diversity amongst its staff body and its student body. And there's a perception that resources aren't always distributed equally amongst the schools. However, participants do report feeling safe at school, and 62% of respondents feel that the district supports all struggling students. Again, we can look at some of the information here in a little bit more detail here at the graph below. So we can see that the orange and the lighter orange represent respondents who strongly disagree or who disagree with these statements. So looking at staff diversity is similar across all schools. We see here that we've got 44% who disagree or strongly disagree. And in terms of student diversity is similar across all district schools. We can see that this is up to 64%. Similarly, when we look at that resources issue that I just mentioned, we can see that about 54% either strongly disagree or disagree that resources are distributed equally amongst schools. Again, based on that data and those findings, we do offer recommendations for the district to consider. The first is to increase parental involvement, particularly amongst Hispanic families. That population has the lowest satisfaction when it comes to issues like parental involvement and engagement. So creating a welcoming environment for that population is important. The second is to provide college and career support, again, particularly for those Hispanic families. 57% of the Hispanic respondents reported that students are encouraged to take challenging courses. That's a little bit lower than respondents from other demographic populations. Third, reassess the resource distribution across the schools. As we saw on that previous slide, there's a perception that some resources aren't equally distributed, so considering that would be important. And then lastly, increasing transparency and communication between staff and families. Parents generally feel that staff are friendly and responsive. However, staff tend to feel that they are a little bit more friendly and responsive. So we do suggest doing some follow-up work around those mixed perceptions. So moving into some key findings, these are a summary of the findings that we've had from both the quantitative analysis and from the survey analysis. Generally speaking, there are positive responses around the level of satisfaction with parental involvement. However, as we mentioned in the previous slide, this is lower amongst Hispanic families. Secondly, staff generally view college and career support more favorably than parents and students. Again, we find that that's more pronounced amongst Hispanic families. So that's something important for the district to consider in terms of those discrepancies. And then again, as we mentioned, staff feel that Cherry Hill lacks diversity within its student body and within its staff population. Most participants report that the district should prioritize a safe school, access to resources, and access to all courses. Generally speaking, Hispanic participants did not have a strong preference in terms of what the district should prioritize compared to other groups. There are consistent disparities in the academic and behavioral data, particularly for Black and Hispanic students, economically disadvantaged students, and then students who participate in special education or the LEP program. All of those groups tend to be overrepresented in negative student outcomes and underrepresented in positive outcomes. These gaps do begin as early as the third grade, and there's a particular decline in Black and Hispanic and economically disadvantaged students participating in gifted programs starting at the middle school level. So it's important to consider some of those early interventions and early programs that can support those students. In terms of economic status, this could have an effect on student outcomes. Economically disadvantaged students are underrepresented when it comes to positive outcomes. And notably, Black and Hispanic students have high rates of being economically disadvantaged compared to their white peers. LEP students represent the largest gap relative to their peers when it comes to most academic measures. They're also the most overrepresented group when it comes to students who failed a course. Black and Hispanic students are more likely to have a discipline situation, and they're more likely to receive a suspension for those infractions than are their white peers. So with that, are there any questions from the board around any of those particular findings?
Mrs. Arroyo.
Thank you. Could you go back to the previous slide?
Or
Where I think the last bullet point brought up. So what questions or, I was in and out with internet connection, my apologies, but what to identify the Black and Hispanic students to receive are more likely to receive disciplinary infractions? How did you collect that piece of information? I'll start with that one.
Sure. So when we do our data analysis, we look at students based on a number identifier. So usually that's a student ID. And then based on that student ID, we collect data in conjunction with Cherry Hill's leadership around those individual student, around that individual student data. So we look at that student ID, and then we look at their demographic information. We look at whether or not that student ID has participated in any programs such as Gifted and Talented. We look at their state proficiency scores. We look at their demographic information. We look at all of the information that was presented in this particular quantitative analysis, and then we identify trends. So that's where the representation index comes in, is we look at all the student IDs across the district, and then we can compare that with all of the disciplinary infractions across the district and all of the academic and behavioral data across the district.
Do you have that broken down? The ones that that receive more disciplinary action within the academic data? Is there information on that?
Sure. So within that dashboard that I showed highlights of, in that actual dashboard, you can manipulate by different variables and by different groups. So if you wanted, for example, to look at how Hispanic students have received suspension rates, you can filter by that and look at that by year, or you could look at it with one school compared to another set of schools, or
more so of the ones that receive higher disciplinary infractions, or of the Hispanic population or Black population that does. How does that, like, where's the relationship between that and their academic progress? Like, is that in there as well?
I see. No, we don't look at correlate. We can certainly follow up with work around that, but generally speaking, we look for trends in the data around demographic representation and then student outcomes. So we don't look for correlations between the different student outcomes. However, that is work we can certainly support in the future if that's something we would like to do more of an analysis on.
Yeah, well, I suspect that if you, one of the recommendations you provided was identifying root causes, that would be a way to identify a root cause to dig further down in that information. The other question I had is, while you identify the different populations that seem to be underrepresented or overrepresented, depending on how you're framing it, in needing additional academic support or lacking or not matching up to their peers, your recommendation was solely focused on Hispanic population and not so much the Black population. So I'm interested in seeing or understanding a little bit more of why, or is it that, it was overwhelmingly responses from the Hispanic community? Because it kind of seems to negate that what you're saying, like if we engage this much part of this conversation to get these survey results, that we don't get enough engagement, access, and supportive services, but the recommendation is that we need it. So I'm not sure. Did I make sense? Do I need to restate that?
Sure. No, I understand. And you're right. It depends on if we're looking at the quantitative data or the survey data. There are certainly discrepancies amongst the Hispanic and Black students, particularly in the quantitative data. However, when it came to the survey data, there was more of a pronounced discrepancy between Hispanic participants and Black participants, which is why the latter half of the presentation focused perhaps a little bit more on that particular group. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I just because quantitative and qualitative, while it gives us the full picture, it tells us different stories. So we need to understand that in order to, as a board, as a community, as a district, we have to understand what aspects are you presenting to us now as Hispanic and Latino communities. We're obvious, and we're saying these things. What is the qualitative data telling us in terms of how that relates? And I just wanted to be clear that the recommendations were based on the interviews and surveys, and not the data, not the actual numbers of the data collection, right?
Sure. So the first set of recommendations that we reviewed were around the quantitative data. The second set of recommendations we reviewed were around the survey data. In terms of a qualitative perspective, we're currently working with the district leadership around conducting some more qualitative research. So working on some in-depth interviews to further garner some of these perceptions around the survey data. So trying to dig in a little bit more thoroughly into why some of these discrepancies exist from the perspective of parent participants. And we'll conduct those both in English and in Spanish so that we do engage that Hispanic population as much as possible.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Mayor?
Thank you. Going back again to page 23 on the breakdown of disciplinary infractions and outcomes and suspensions. Is there further data with regards to the types of infractions that you're comparing such, there's a range of infractions, right? From somewhat less serious to more serious. Are these figures and percentages accurately reflecting a fair comparison of the type of infractions as between the identified groups?
Sure. So generally speaking, we look at binary outcomes. So going back to pretty early on here, when we look at the disciplinary incident, we can see if there's a disciplinary incident, and then we look at whether or not that resulted in a suspension or whether or not that resulted in some sort of restitution. So if we were to go into the dashboard tool itself and interact with the data in a way that looked at this, we could see what percentage of disciplinary incidents, for example, amongst white students, resulted in a suspension. And then this measure looks at that rate overall. So how many, in this example, white students received a suspension in the general population, as opposed to a representation of the particular disciplinary incidents. But to further answer your question, these are the only two outcomes we looked at within that discipline measure, and they're binary. So in other words, either students received a suspension or they did not receive a suspension. This doesn't differentiate between say a 3-day suspension or a 2-day suspension. We can certainly do a more in-depth behavioral analysis with that piece, but this particular dashboard looks at the metrics in that way.
But nor would I be correct then in assuming that it also doesn't differentiate between the severity of suspensions, of the severity of disciplinary infractions.
Correct, because again, it's just binary. So did the student receive a suspension or did they not receive a suspension? This particular scope of quantitative analysis doesn't look at it on the level of, did a student receive a suspension for a fighting infraction or for skipping class or anything like that.
Is that information available, or if it were to be made available to your group, could you further drill down on that?
Absolutely. We do behavioral quantitative analyses pretty frequently for districts. So whereas the focus of this particular quantitative analysis was more on that equity work, we can certainly do one that digs deeper into the disciplinary data, assuming that all that information is available at the district level.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Rude?
All right, so I don't know, yeah. So I just have maybe some questions in here, but I have a few comments that I feel like are important enough that I want to say them out loud. For people looking at this data right now, and for board members and within the school system, I feel like we should look at it with a grain of salt, because there's a lot of depth here that we don't quite have. And I think Mr. Mayor brought that up very, very nicely. Because that one finding suggesting that Black and Hispanic students receive a suspension for their infractions more often than white or Asian students could be interpreted as a racial disparity that is something we have to strongly correct within our school system. And definitely this data gives me cause to be like, oh, whoa. But as Mr. Mayor points out, we don't know what the infractions were, and the disparity based on the on the infraction may not be there. And it may be that certain students have committed more infractions. So I think it's important for us to really look into the depth of the data to make sure that we're interpreting it correctly. Because I would definitely look at this data and be like, okay, we need to really look at how we're enforcing discipline in our schools and make some real corrections. But that may be inaccurate depending on what the actual data are. I think one of the most important things that we should all take into consideration, and I think is one of the probably most important recommendations, is that we need to conduct a root cause analysis for a lot of this data. Clearly there's an issue with our Black and Hispanic community. A lot of that seems to be tied into, that didn't come until the end, where the statement was made that in our town, the economically disadvantaged correlates higher with Black and Hispanic population. So that's important to note, that there's multiple factors going on there. So really we need to dive into the quantitative or the qualitative analysis of what's going on there. But clearly the numbers suggest that there's something going on with our communities of color that we have to figure out how to address. One thing that I didn't see in here was within the Hispanic community, like how many of, like, is there any kind of measure for whether these kids' parents speak English in the home? That could affect ELA outcomes, whether they're bilingual and just how much English they're hearing at home. What language is spoken in the home could also have a huge impact on parent engagement and parent involvement. So that's definitely something as a board, I think we need to pay attention to. Sorry, I had a lot of thoughts and opinions as I'm going through the data. And I think the biggest thing for me is that looking at the numbers, I had kind of a gut visceral reaction that I'm like, wow, like there's work to be done. And I think that's very true. And what I want us to do is look at, I would love to hear as time goes on, and I'm sure we'll talk about this in goals and different things later on. So I'm not making any recommendations or asking for anything now, but I think that we need to look at some of these things in more depth. And I really think that of this whole summary, the conducting a root cause analysis is, in my mind, one of the most important things to really see what are the actual disparities, why are they there, and how do we fix them. So sorry, I don't really have a question in there. I just really felt that was all important for me to say. Thank you.
Sure. No, I understand. And just to speak to a couple of your points really quickly, we did administer the survey in Spanish as well, again, to try to get as much participation from that population as we could. Based on the data we received, 11% of the respondents said that Spanish is the primary language spoken at their home. So a decent chunk of respondents seem to primarily be Spanish speaking.
Okay, Mrs. Fleischer?
Thank you. Actually, just building on what you had just said, Mr. Cornicky, about the methodology of picking who actually was given the survey to answer, and the breakup of who actually answered that, as far as the community members and the parents especially.
Sure. Let me pull that piece back up. Is this the slide you were referencing?
Yes, that is the slide. Thank you.
Mhm.
I was just wondering, how were the people picked to actually complete the survey? And do we know the makeup of even the parents and guardians? Like you said, 11% came back Spanish speaking in the household. But how were we chosen? What net was thrown out to make sure that it was diverse as far as the parent guardians or the community members?
Mrs. Fleischer, I can start and then Mr.
Thank you.
Cornegie can take it up from there. So we distributed the survey. Mrs. Wilson sent it out via social media. Every building principal sent it out to their constituents. Every building principal asked students to take secondary, asked students to take it. Every building principal sent it out to their community members. So I think we hit every avenue that we could think of. We sent it to CHACA, to CHICA, to CHSEPTA, to CPAG. Any group that we were aware of, we sent the survey to.
Thank you, Mrs. Wethington.
Sure.
I appreciate that. So out of all that, we still just got 2,500 people. So I think that really, showed the diverse amount of people that did take this on. The other point and the other question I had is one of the slides talked about the first slide that we were talking about of let's see, it was one of the first pages, the data page, number 6, that slide, page 6. We talked about the incident and the restitution because whether they participated in restorative justice, that's actually, one of our district goals is to see that restorative justice is actually taking place more in the schools. But I do believe it's actually being built up, and I'd be interested to see if is that another point of data that we could get, how it's being used in the school, or if there's more schools that use it than other schools, because that would be really interesting for us, because that is something that we're really working towards for our district.
Absolutely. We'd be happy to support additional work around restorative justice programs. We have several partners across the country who right now restorative justice and restorative practices is their primary focus. And so similar to how we've approached this, we've done some quantitative work around those measures, looking a little bit more in depth around the behavioral incidences, as Dr. Rood, I believe, was mentioning, but also looking at survey data, supporting supporting building level principals with observational tools to see how restorative practices are being implemented in the individual school buildings. So there's a variety of instruments and tools we can use to support the district's work around restorative justice. One other thing I can note as well is that since that's one of the metrics we looked at for this dashboard, when we update it, and we can update it over the summer, assuming the data is available, we can look at trends over time to see if, as you pointed out, if that seems to be becoming more of a disciplinary outcome in recent years, since that's been an area of focus for the district.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
And I turn it back to Mrs. Arroyo.
Thank you. And I just want to thank the team, because this data and the picture that draws is super helpful. But I do want to make just a very clear statement, and I'll say this on a personal and professional level, and as the role that I play here. I just want to be clear that the Latino population is growing in our county and in the state of New Jersey by almost 11%. It has grown by almost 11% since 2012. So even within our district, while Black and Latino individuals and families might not make them a large majority, the numbers that are represented in the data that's represented here is a large portion within that minority group of Black and Latino families. That said, it impacts more of these families, which is why the data and the numbers that are shown and the impact of what these individuals have stated and the qualitative and quantitative portions of this is important to see, because while it might be 12% of an overall larger population, it is 12% of a smaller population within the grouping of Cherry Hill. That is where we start digging in deeper and then seeing different academic progress. When we start looking at things differently through a lens of racial equity, the disparity is very apparent. We've seen it similarly in other reports that we've discussed in conversations with our schools, our students, our staff. So this doesn't tell us anything too much different from what we've seen before. It helps us break down where things are, where we might need to narrow our focuses on, which is super helpful with our goals and our strategic outlines of what we would like to see in our future and how we're developing our curriculum. So this is identifying that we need to become more racially equitable in this community based on that information. I don't want to dismiss or even come off with the vibe that we're dismissing Latino and Black family voice at this table, because we need to be offered more opportunities that are available to everybody. Those discussions, having things offered in Spanish and other languages, those are important. Like clearly the pandemic showed, and all the impact with our Black Lives Matter movements and our student voice shows where we need to be. This our data here is presenting a picture that it's one thing to ignore, right, and keep moving, but to say it's not happening, the numbers are right there. So I just want to make that point clear, because as a person that analyzes race equity and data and disparities on a day-to-day basis, what you've pinpointed shows the larger part of a minority group getting impacted by how we're addressing things through the way we maybe have been doing things historically, which is good to know at this point, because we can move forward and with progress and all the awesome things that we have outlined. But I just want to be clear that this data is telling a story and we need to listen to it.
Ms. Friedel.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this presentation and for presenting this data to us. Just a couple of comments, maybe more than questions. I noticed that, like, when we talk about the math proficiency, program access, ELA proficiency, we've spent a lot of time on Hispanic students, white students, and even Asian students, but we don't really see where our Black students are falling in these areas. My other comment is we're not really seeing students with IEPs. So where are the students with IEPs in the gifted and talented programs? Where are they in the math proficiency and so forth? So and of course our ELL students, which I think we have a little bit more incorporated in this data. And then my other, I guess, clarification comment that kind of piggybacks on Mrs. Fleischer's with the surveys. Mrs. Wethington, did they go to the elementary school students through high school, or was it just middle school, high school?
The survey links went to every school in the district. If students were participating, can you hear me, Mrs. Sugars? Okay, if students were participating, we would generally target fifth graders, but they were available to parents pre-K-12, even Barclay.
Okay, so parents were across the board, community members across the board,
Correct.
but the students were more the secondary level.
Primarily secondary, yes.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense, but I just wanted to clarify. And, that's kind of one of the things that stuck out to me is that it was a pretty low return rate on a district with 10,000 plus students, plus their families, guardians, and community members. So is that also broken down by demographics? So do we know the demographics of who filled out the survey? So when 88% of families or recipients say that the cultures are well represented, was that demographic a mixed demographic, or was the demographic more one-sided in, white families, Hispanic families, Asian families?
That's a great question, and I'm looking at some of the data right now. So in terms of students, there were 97 students who identified as Hispanic who participated in the survey, 62 students who identified as Black or African American, and 154 who identified as multiracial. So that was sort of the segmented response there.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Ms. Stern.
So first of all, I'm trying to make sure that I'm as data savvy as many of my fellow board members. I'm not sure I'm quite as data savvy. My statistic class was think it was 27 years ago, the last time I took a statistic class or something along those lines. But anyway, I think to some of the points that have been raised by quite a few of my fellow board members, I think going a little deeper into the data, a little better breakdown. So, we've talked about a lot of the different groups. When I look at these, some of the math and AP, and I say, algebra, geometry, those proficiencies and AP coursework, some of the absolute lowest numbers, the groups represented the fewest actually are special ed and also English language learners. And so I think it's really important to understand, when we talk about special ed, that's a huge group. That could be kids with a physical disability. It could be kids with a learning impairment. It could be a developmental disability. So I think we really need to understand better what those groups are and how those different, learning issues can impact, performance in those areas and abilities. So that's one thing that, I just think, and economically disadvantaged, it's a broad group, but it also, there's so much overlap. I think, Mr. Mayor, you had asked about when are we going to get all the raw data? I think it was you that said that, right? And I think, that this was the first step, but I think obviously this group is going to need, we're going to need a lot more data because we have a lot of questions. So I think that's really important that we do this. I also just, want to say to the group, we're moving into the next month working on our district goals with the administration. So this work, directly is related to the goals we set last year and the goals we need to look at setting forth going forward. And, things like family engagement is already identified. And that's when I think before we even have the root causes, we know we need that more. And we need lots of families to be engaged. So I think this at least starts us even in the next few weeks, helping us give a little bit of direction. But there's a lot more information and we know we have a massive challenge with achievement and achievement disparities. And that's been talked about for years at this table. And most of us weren't here when that conversation began. But I think, we need to be the group that, that in collaboration with our administration supports making some real changes and really getting something done with that. That's the way I look at it. So that's it.
Mrs. Elmore Stratton.
So I just had a couple questions. The first one, in terms of this data, this is just a snippet of what the administrators received, right? So they have a fuller shot that's more detailed in their dashboard with the access. And then how long do they keep that access to be able to refer back to it?
Sure, great question. So yes, these are just screenshots. Again, it's an interactive dashboard, so you can look at data based on different years, different schools. Even if you hover over the different boxes here, it provides you with additional information. And then looking at something like the additional piece with the side-by-side comparison, there's a lot more sort of segmented findings that can be looked at here. This is available through their Hanover portal membership. So they've got access to it there for as long as they need.
So if on the board we wanted to see further reports, that would be something we could request from Dr. Malosha or for you guys to pull up to share with us. That was okay. Thank you so much. That was my first question. And then I was thinking similar to Mrs. Fleischer, because we use Qualtrics where I work as well, and not everybody responds back, no matter how many times you send it out. So I was just wondering what the actual amounts were, but you were able to share that as well. So I guess my question is not really for the Hanover team, but more for Dr. Malosha and his team. So now that we have some of these bigger bullets of recommendations, what do we feel like is the next direction or step? And then what would be best for us as a board to help support that next step, whatever it is? Or, I just want to know, because obviously this information is pretty jarring for all of us. And it's like, oh, a big shock, just like Dr. Ruth said, but it's also to Mrs. Stern's point of like, we already knew this. So I just want to know, as a board member, what does the team need from us? Like what will help you with that? Is it getting more people to respond? Is it supporting things, especially as we get ready to go into goals conversation? I really want to know where that you want those talks to go that would help your team, I guess.
Yeah, so actually, Mrs. Elmore Stratton, you're taking the words right out of my mouth here. I'm thinking the same. I mean, I think there's a couple things, right? I think the first thing is the board has to say two things, I think. And I think we've already said it. Number one, this is important. This is an important place to focus effort. This is something that creates, a work plan, an idea that, we should leave things better tomorrow than they were today. But that really means, I think, Dr. Malash, really what we need to think about is, what are we aiming at? Where are we going? What are the checkpoints for the board? Because it is one of those things over time, we do see things like this in snippets, but a lot of times it is similar information. And I think that probably is why we engaged Hanover and why we got this. But the question is, where do we go from here? Quick question for Hanover, the 50% or higher growth for English for math, maybe I missed it, but what does that mean in context here?
Sure. So there are growth rates that are measured by different districts and at the state level. Different states usually measure that in slightly different ways, but what they're looking for is a growth rate amongst those students. So have students essentially improved from previous years to the present year. So when we're talking about growth rates, that's generally what we're looking at.
Okay. So yeah, so that's kind of what I thought. So when I look at 50% or higher growth rate on both English, math, and GPA of 3 and above, I'm thinking to myself, all right, this is our intervention in the students' lives for a year, and we're doing that. That seems to be the best measures of this. But going back to some what my fellow board members have said, the root cause analysis, figuring out what are some of the barriers, and really delving into the data so that we have a more nuanced sense. It's almost like, what are the hypotheses and do they prove out over time? But I think this is big, but at the same time, I think we'd like to see more of this. We'd like to lean on our professionals to figure out. And the other thing with goals is, the old saying, Rome wasn't built in a day. This won't change overnight. But progress is extremely important, and that can be measured in months and years. Whereas really, delving into this fully will take longer than that. So these are my thoughts, but I thought maybe we'd turn it over to Dr. Malash
Thank you, Mr. Vadi. I'm actually going to have Mrs. Wethington start us off with the discussion. We've spent quite a bit of time going through this since last fall, probably, as we prepared
Last summer.
The information last summer, when we started. Mrs. Wethington, why don't you jump in and then I will follow you. Unless Dr. May and Dr. Morton, you guys can certainly jump in as well.
So, Mr. Vadia, our next action would be to work with Hanover on the root cause analysis. That's the next natural step from our perspective as the administrative team. At the same time, there's some recommendations that we can begin to address now, and we're going to do that through our cultural proficiency, equity, and character education team, which we have restructured. And some of the reason for that is we felt sort of without a roadmap. Like we had goals we've been working on, but without any real kind of concrete data about what we need to be looking at. And that's why we asked Hanover to work on first the scorecard and then the survey to give us two different types of data to look at, and then to at least start the direction. So we know that early literacy and math are areas that we need to work on. We can start to discuss that as a team, because those are areas that we're already have been focused on, right? And looking at discipline practices, those are current conversations through code of conduct. at every level, we've been talking about that, how to use a restorative lens, looking at the data. We talked about that in P&L committee. Ms. Friedel will have an update on that. So that's a current conversation. Looking at opportunity gaps, again, it's another conversation that we've been having. I mean, James gave a great response on looking at survey data over time and longitudinal data. So we can begin to work on some of the recommendations right now. There are things that we definitely have control over. One was staff talking about training. That's on our bucket list of things to accomplish. A little bit more challenging during COVID just because of substitutes, but that's something that we're working on for a plan. There are lots of things we can start to roll out, but there are things we want to wait on because we want to get a little bit more data from Hanover about some of the root causes so we have a firm direction to go in. That helpful? I'm sorry, I was hogging the mic.
Thank you so much. So at the school level, we have done quite a bit to take this data that's presented sort of in aggregate, right? So this gives percentages and broad percentages. But what we've looked to do is to break these percentages down to specific numbers and then translate those from numbers into individual students and to individual people. I think it's really important for us to understand that these data represent stories and they represent families. And it's been critically important for us to try to understand what those stories tell us, what the individual challenges that students are, may be having, and to develop action plans and processes and have those in place so that our teachers and school communities understand, the challenges and can help students to move forward. There's this idea of like comparative progress, and then there's like absolute progress and growth as well. We definitely try to ensure that each student is making growth. Some students start at the 1 yard line. Some students may be at a different place, but the bottom line is for us to impact and understand each of our students and to help to push them forward and make growth. And that's exactly what we have been doing throughout the year, and certainly over the last few years, what we have done as well.
Thank you, Mrs. Wellington and Dr. Mahan, and thank you, Mr. Avadia and the board members for the questions, right, for where we are. As I said, we talked about this with the board last spring. This was this equity audit and the survey were included in our district goals. It's something that we recognize needs to be done. I give the board credit, the board at the time last year, the board that is seated at the table now, for being willing to have the conversation, for being willing to authentically and very publicly analyze the information and to put the results out there very publicly, right? There are anecdotal pieces that many of us have assumed, and different pieces where we put stuff together, what we believe is happening, what we believe some of the challenges are for some of our families. To authenticate that, to put this in a matter that's backed up by the data and the analyses that we use, with this outside organization who are, this is what they do, right? This is their role. They are fantastic people, continues to provide the foundational piece for us to influence and to inform us about what we need to do stepping forward. We know the most important thing that exists in the life of a child academically during the course of the year is the relationship that child has with the teachers in the classroom, right? So professional development and work with our staff, work with the support staff, work with the administrative team, work at this level. What can the board do? The board needs to continue to drive the conversation forward, not to let it be quiet. That it's something that's out there, to make sure that people are thinking about it and talking about it. When we talk about equity and diversity and being an inclusive environment for all students, and all means all, that's an incredibly broad term. The board has to own that and continue to own that. That's going to allow us, that's going to allow these folks over at the table to work with the building principals and to work with the teaching staff and to work with the different organizations within the district to truly make a difference for our children, right? This is an ongoing journey. This is something we will continue to work on. We're not going to turn around a year from now and this is going to be fixed, right? This is about improving the opportunity and the access and improving what children have the opportunity to do as they go through the system and as they prepare to finish the system. Everybody's got a limited amount of time that they're going to spend in our school district. We need to make sure we do everything we can, because some kids don't have good years. We need to make sure we do everything we can to make sure that the next year is going to be better, and the next year is going to build on that. Dr. Morton tells a great piece about it. That's identifying individuals, that's identifying families, right? There are real people behind each one of these data points that exist, right? And what does that mean? Who are the children and who are the families that are living in Cherry Hill? There's a perception of folks of what they think Cherry Hill is, right? Cherry Hill is a much better place than what people perceive on the outside. Cherry Hill is not reflective of what many people that I talk to when I go to meetings at the state level or at a regional level or at a national level think of Cherry Hill. They're picturing Cherry Hill from the mid 1980s or from the early 1990s. Cherry Hill, and I was here, Cherry Hill is a much better place today in 2022 than it was in 1988 or 1989. The level of diversity, the integration that we have in the community with different people, the tapestry of families that are blended together, again, in every possible way is incredible for us. Now, we need to make a difference on a daily basis, empower the teachers to truly be able to make the changes they want to make in the classroom, support kids as individuals, and know that they're going to be challenges, right? Know that resources may look different in one school than they may look in another school. Know that we need to target what's available and what we have to do the best by all the kids that we have. We have some children in our community who are growing up with great opportunity already when they get here. We have some children who have had very limited opportunity when they arrive at our front door, whether it's at Barclay in the preschool, whether it's in 5th grade, or whether it's in kindergarten. We need to make sure that we can do everything we can for each of those children as they're here so that everybody can have the possibility to achieve. Everybody has not had the same opportunities when they come to the school district at all. We know, because we do the longitudinal look and do the longitudinal work, we know that the longer the children spend in our school district, the more successful they are academically. We know that. It's one of the few things that we can go back historically and point to. So we want to make sure that everybody has that opportunity, again, regardless of when they start with us. The board can continue to provide us with the support and the understanding, and again, to force the conversation publicly. Such an important role that you all have, because truly to make a difference with what we're doing.
Let me go back around to the board. Mrs. Tong, jump in.
Yes. Hi, good evening, everyone. I just want to say thank you for the presentation. It's very resourceful. It will help, our board and I think the administration to help out to help the children who needs extra support. That's very nice to for the presentation tonight. Thanks again.
Thanks. Ms. Friedel?
My question actually goes to CPEACE and understanding the restructuring of CPEACE and who is now part of, I guess it's the executive committee, and how CPEACE is being structured, because it sounds like there's been some major changes to it.
I can answer that, Ms. Friedel. So the CPEACE committee, we've had very many dedicated staff and community members working in partnership with the group. What we found was it just began to be unwieldy because of the sheer number of people. So as a concrete example, Dr. Mahan, Dr. Morton, and Miss Mallory and I might be working on an HR goal. And 1 week, Dr. Morton and I are there. The next week, Dr. Mahan and Miss Mallory are there. The next week, a different group is there. And we just were struggling to make progress on getting the goals move forward. Not because of anyone's lack of commitment. You have a lot of people, so it's challenging to manage. In addition to that, we were gathering data from the scorecard and from the equity audit that we knew was coming, and we wanted to kind of use some of that to guide the work. So we talked to the chairs of the committee and we talked to a consultant that we're working with, Dr. Moore Williams, and we talked about ways that we could structure the group to make it more manageable and to use the community resources in the best way possible. So we recreated a team to work on sort of the management of the group, like organizing the meetings. Our group will look at some of the data from the survey to start talking about how we move some of those pieces forward. And then we will continue to meet with the larger community group. I think we said quarterly, to get their feedback, talk about, here's what we're thinking about as a goal based on the data. What are you saying? What are you thinking? Community meeting, teachers, students, parents, everyone who had been on the committee prior to, who had prior been on the committee. And then we have 2 administrators who will sort of take the role of the former chairs, who are the chairs will be switching in July, and they will continue to work with Dr. Williams on building content. We're trying to make the content in the schools more school specific. The content has been the same for every building in the district, which is not a bad thing, but every building's sort of in a different place. We're trying to make the content more building specific so that they can then be where they are and use the lessons and the information to meet the needs in their building. And then the former chairs will stay on to continue the character ed work, because a piece of our work remains character ed. We don't want that to get lost. So they will continue to be the character ed sort of ambassadors for buildings that want to move forward with the school to character process. That will still be part of the work that we're doing. So we've kind of broken the larger group out into 3 different pieces to manage it better and to make sure that, you know, we are able to move the goals forward.
So thank you. So just one clarifying point. So is it the executive committee? Is that what you're
Correct.
calling that group? Is that only district employees?
For now it is. And that may change, but at this moment, that's accurate. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Mrs. Elmore Stratton.
Just have a question now. So for that executive committee, is it possible for a board member to be on it or no?
I'm sorry, would you say that one more time?
Is there opportunity for a board member to be part of that at all at any time, or is it for the larger group, or could they be on that executive committee as another committee we have?
Sure, Dr. Malash, yeah.
Yes,
Sure.
yeah, board member can absolutely sit to have a board member sit as a liaison. On the committee, they wouldn't actually, you know what I mean? They would be the liaison between the board and the committee, but yes, absolutely.
Okay. And not that I was signing up to volunteer for anything else. No, nope. I was just throwing that out there if
I can
anybody's
write that down,
interested.
Mrs.
See
Elmore
if someone else,
Stratton.
I think Mr. Mayor actually I just volunteered him, see? But I asked that question. And then one thing I want to go back to is something that Mrs. Arroyo kind of said, or was trying to, I think, articulate. And then Dr. Malosha also spoke on it as well. So in these numbers, you know, we see that there is a small subset of Hispanic and Latinx population that is, you know, very underrepresented in the wrong places and overrepresented in the wrong places, kind of. And again, I'm not using the best wording here. However, what I do want to make sure that we're very public about is that no matter how small the number, it's still relevant and it's very much important for us, right? So speaking to what Dr. Malone said in terms of the community consistently changing, I think Mrs. Arroyo has been very loud about it, and I'm sure I've been loud about it, maybe not in these settings, but in other places, is that we have to start now projecting what the trends are coming forward. So like we knew 2-3 years ago, before the world became just a giant pandemic every day, we knew that the Hispanic and Latino population was growing, specifically on the West Side. So what do we need to do to attack that for the next 3 to 5 years and not just the next year out? And is that something that CP should be working on, or is that something that admin should be working? Like those are all things that I just want to make sure that we're not discrediting anything because numbers are quote unquote small on this dashboard. And then the other thought is just remembering that this is deeper. There's I'm sure this is like a whole bunch more data, and we're just getting a small piece of it. But that as board members, I'm sure that we can ask for other deeper dives on everything. But just want to make it key that everybody's voice is going to matter in this, and not even smaller numbers don't mean smaller attention. And then us being the first board historically to be as diverse as we are. You know, we have our first Mexican American, we have only the third African American, we have, you know, someone that's member of LGBTQIA community here. We have someone that has a student with special ed. Like this is the most diverse we're ever going to be. I hope not, but at this point in time, so use us to help you either answer some questions that maybe you don't know, or give you a pulse of a community that maybe is missing from these surveys. Not that we could speak for everybody, but we certainly need to be playing to our strengths that we have as a board, because this is the most diverse that we've ever been. And it's going to continue to get more diverse, God willing, because the community is going to continue to change. So I just wanted to put that out there. Like, don't miss this opportunity when you've got so much here to play with. So that's all. Sorry.
All right, so Mr. Mayor, I saw, no, wait, we're not going to you yet, sorry. But I saw some definite body language. Now, did you want to be our liaison?
I am thrilled to be your liaison.
Okay, so
If
that's
available.
done, but
So
actually we got to
make
go
that
to,
official.
all right. All right, Dr. Marsh will be in touch with next steps.
Sounds good. Just a couple more things. I'm not a member of one of those particular minorities, but have always valued, celebrated diversity, equity. It has been a tremendous value to me to learn from lived experiences that I could only learn through a book. And while there's value in that, of course, it's not the same as sitting next to someone whose perspective on the same events may be very different because of their lived experience. So I've always valued that and look forward to being as strong and aggressive a supporter of all of these efforts as anyone would be, regardless of the experience that I personally have lived. And so I look forward to working, whether it's with Hanover on maybe deeper dive, working with CPEACE as a liaison, working with other members of the board, with the administration, to move this not just conversation forward, but to start moving towards results which may take longer than probably any of us at the table will be comfortable with, but they have to move forward. Those the root cause discussions and analysis, obviously that's critical because we know some of the what's now. A lot of this data really supports what we've seen, even before I was a member of the board, but I've been in this community for well over 20 years and I grew up right next to it. But without knowing why some of those numbers are what they are, we really can't be as effective in dealing with it and getting to the how do we fix this? How do we make the experiences of the students in all of our schools fairer for everybody, more equitable for everybody, and be that much make the community that much prouder of what's happening in our school. So I'm looking forward to it. I think, yeah, some of these numbers don't look great. My kids will tell you that I don't bring the red Sharpie out often unless it's Valentine's Day, in which case I might bring it out in areas where they would prefer I not. But I brought it out when I saw some of these, especially on the suspension and disciplinary issues, because it concerned me. It still does concern me. So I look forward to drilling down on that as well. But I'm looking forward to moving forward and to supporting these efforts as much as I can.
Thanks. Dr. Rood.
I just wanted to jump in with a quick question for Mrs. Wethington. You said that the goals, there was a challenge. I just wanted to make sure I got this correct, that there was a challenge in some of the goals because there wasn't a clear roadmap. Could you expand on that and maybe comment on like what we as a board can do to because I'm thinking that maybe that roadmap is our responsibility or something. I'm not sure, but.
Dr. Rood, the cultural proficiency, equity, and character committee has a 5-year plan. So the 5-year plan encompassed about 8 goals at one time. They were able to get them down to about 6 and then to about 5. It really is not a board issue. We know where we need to go as far as calling the plan. So the board has been tremendously supportive in the CPEACE committee. The issue has really just been the consistency. And again, I am in no way, we have had fantastic participation. We're grateful and want to maintain that level of participation. We appreciate everyone who has been committed to the work. We just want to use their time in the wisest way possible. And we certainly don't want people coming to a meeting and then they're switching to another goal committee because their partners are not there for no other reason. People have lives. So I'm trying to be very, responsible in how I'm phrasing my response to you, because I want everyone who's participating to know how much we appreciate their time and their input. They've been dedicated for many, many years. So we still want to work with them collaboratively. It's just that after a certain point, it's difficult for the group to manage. It's difficult for the chairs to manage. We had so many meetings in the calendar. I didn't know what meeting was happening, what's not. I'm like, I have this in the calendar. No, that's next week. So it just needed kind of a reset. Some of it was structural. Some of it is the goals. We really needed more of a definition of what direction we need to go in. And we felt that we being Dr. Malash and I, felt that this was the best way for us to kind of do a reset, because now we have some concrete data to start to move the plan forward. Does that clarify?
Yeah, so thank you for clarifying. I definitely understand the challenges working with large groups and trying to build consensus and move things at a quick speed. That doesn't always happen. So just, if there are things that the board can do in our own goals, if there are suggestions that administration can make for us, for when we consider our goals that we can help, just please, make sure, I know you will, bring those forward, but thank you for clarifying.
Dr. Reed, yes, and I appreciate Mrs. Wethington going through. It's just different sets of goals and different pieces, in terms of what goes on and where we are. The CPEACE goals, and just remind folks, there's maybe folks that are watching. So CPEACE is an acronym that we use, and it stands for Cultural Proficiency, Equity, and Character Education. At one time, they were all separate committees that met in the district. We combined them about 6 years ago. But they are locked together. The CPEACE goals, certainly continue to take into consideration the three overarching goals, that we have in the district. That's a part of what they do.
Okay, let's look meaningfully at our student board reps. Anything either of you would like to add to the discussion? It's definitely about you and your colleagues and, student achievement and equity. I mean, all these important things. I don't want to miss the chance to offer you a chance to weigh in, but you don't have to. This is unscripted. No one told them in advance.
I just had a question before I made a comment. I know last year, I was a part of the CPECE student part of the CPEACE group. Is that still happening?
So they haven't met this year, Ariana, in that same way, because we haven't been able to release the teachers during the course of the day, right? Remember, most of those meetings took place sometime between 8 a.m. and 3 p.m. or so.
Yeah.
Because of the challenges that exist post-COVID, or even during COVID still, we have not been able to get substitutes during the day, which has dramatically impacted the structure when those meetings could occur, as opposed to time that was built into the regular daily schedule for people. So they have not met like that. The impact of COVID over the last 2 years had dramatic effect on professional development that we've been able to do, how committees have been able to meet, people's availability outside of school hours. But no, you haven't missed. Those just have not occurred in that same manner.
Yeah, I wanted to say, I really appreciate this study. I'm one of those families that Spanish is the only language that we speak at home. I lived with my grandma for a very long time, and she does not speak very good English. So even in Puerto Rico, in my English class, which was Spanish class here, it wasn't very in-depth English, but even in my English class, I was negatively affected because I did not have any of that help at home. I couldn't ask my grandma, I couldn't ask my grandpa, there was nobody at home, and I couldn't really use the internet because I didn't know what it meant. So I was in third grade. So yeah, I really do appreciate this. As for the discipline thing, I know a lot of people have brought that up. I know the student group did bring that up last year. And I know some people have asked to see more in depth of that. I would also like to see more in depth of that because I have witnessed a lot of incidents like that at my own school. So I would love to see that data, that student input, if that makes sense. And yeah, as for the parent what's it called, involvement, I really think it's a really good idea. But I also want to mention that a lot of parents, simply because of their work, because of how many kids they have, it's very hard for them to be involved, like very involved in school. Many parents have many jobs, many parents have a lot of kids, so they simply just can't. So I think it's also very important to give a lot of the same resources we give to parents directly to the students, so that those people who don't have the parents that are always there for them, so that they also have those same resources. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Is it on?
Yeah.
All right, I don't have anything too specific. I've agreed with most of everything the board has said. Just excited to see what's to come of the research here tonight. That's all.
Here's, I know we have to move on. There's correspondence itself is going to be probably 45 minutes. Here's what I'd like to do. I don't know. Hopefully the board is aligned on this. I'd like to put this in old business in May 10th. By May 10th, we'll have had the discussion with Jesse Adams. We'll have started on the goal process. But I think, Dr. Melange, with you and your team, we're going to need, to kind of like wrap our heads back around this and what we could do. I agree with Dr. Morton. Every family has a story. It's unique. It's important. It's real. One of the ways that we can be involved as board members is to, be somewhat participating in meetings to try to understand some of these stories and what they might mean. That may not be the place to go, though. It probably isn't, right? There's the root cause analysis, it seems, obvious is a critical first step. So I'd like to look at that in old business first, work session in May. Where can we get, as we went to the building level, what's coming back, but just to keep this, Dr. Melange, as you said, top of mind, because it's a report, it's valuable, it's good progress. If we don't keep looking at it on a regular basis, I fear we'll look at it again in a year and have made some progress, but maybe not as much as I think this board could commit to. And the other thing is, I know for the return to learn committees and this, there is fatigue that comes from being on a committee. There's no doubt that's real. We appreciate people are doing a lot. They're thinking outside the box. They're putting in extra time. They're missing out on pieces they could have done. There's an opportunity cost is what I'm saying. But it may be a time to think about, who wasn't tapped the first time, who might be a participant that would, find it. And I don't know what it looks like with schedules and commitments, and maybe it's truly not possible. But I think at least bringing, Ariana and her group and that group quarterly, is a good place to go. That's been identified already. But I think just, whatever we can do to support now that we have a liaison, whatever meeting Joel has to go to, he'll be available, obviously. So I just think I would normally say, let's look at it in 2 weeks, but I want to respect spring break. Man to my right, people are working extremely hard, and I don't want people working over the break, or I would say in 2 weeks, but let's look at it May 10th. I have a few things under our belt as well, but I really think Hanover, I think the whole board does. And this is critically important. We need to stay on this. We need to do, do well and make progress. So with that, everyone okay to move forward? All right. Thank you. All right. I guess we'll thank Hanover. You can certainly stay, Hanover, but we would surely understand.
Well, we appreciate your time, and thank you for giving us the opportunity to answer some of your questions. And we're looking forward to partnering with you on further projects. Have a great night.
You too. Thank you. Next, we are at administrative reports, and I will turn it over to Dr. Melange.
We actually don't have any additional administrative reports tonight. There's no update for the Road Forward Committee. There has been no change, no updates, no meetings. We're running, right? We're moving. So there's nothing to update in that way. So we maintained our focus on the Hanover presentation.
All right, and that brings us to correspondence. Who from the board, let me see who's participating online, would like to participate and share something for correspondence? We'll start with Mr. Mayor.
So I've just a couple. One, I would have shared at the last meeting. Unfortunately, I wasn't here, but I had an opportunity to visit Rosa Middle School when the Cherry Hill West Athletes Against Bullying group came in to do presentations to a number of the classes. It was a great session, great opportunity to see how well these high school students, this was mostly the executive committee of Athletes Against Bullying, so it was mostly seniors. But they did a great job. I sat in on one or two of their presentations to the classes in engaging the younger kids with tools that helps them better navigate sometimes awkward situations when they see potential bullying or uncomfortable, awkward situations take place. It's important, and it's great also to have the sort of influence of some of these older kids and older athletes that the middle school kids will look up to. I know we all do our best, I'm sure, at home as parents to instill these kinds of values in kids, but to have someone that the kids also look up to in a different way, older students, athletes, the kids that they want to be when they get to high school, to show them the way, to show them what's right, what's wrong, different tools and how you can address situations, and you can really be a partner to someone who may be troubled by bullying, and identifying what it is was great. So I loved seeing the enthusiasm that the kids all showed, that the teachers, in particular Coach Anthony, a couple of the other coaches. It was a great program. Glad I was there. I know they also went out last week to do the same program, but they did it at Carusi, and I believe tomorrow they're going out to Beck. So it's great to see that it's beginning to pick up some momentum, and hopefully that will continue. It was a really good day. And then the only other one was last week. I had the opportunity to attend along with Ms. Fleischer and Dr. Malash the Unsung Heroes Breakfast at Cherry Hill West. Just another great opportunity to see that, give the kids a chance to show their appreciation for someone in their world, whether it's their academic world or cultural world, that has made a huge difference to them. Particularly great to see that there were so many students that chose teachers, whether current high school teachers or middle school teachers, that affected them in a way that was more meaningful to them than just they helped them learn how to draw, a triangle. So that was really great. It was great to hear from some of the kids that read their letters out loud, and also to just visit with some of the teachers and also parents to see that it meant a lot to them, to know that the kids do pay attention. We know that sometimes our children don't appear to as much as we might like them to, but they really do. They're sponges. And it was great to see that that they do have that appreciation for some important people in their lives that help them. And I look forward to doing these and hoping to see it again next year. That's it.
Thank you. Ms. Friedel?
So I just was able to attend Bye Bye Birdie at Carusi over the weekend. And I just want to say that, the staff and the students did a phenomenal job. It's so nice to see the talent of these young people. It was a very inclusive show. It was a lot of fun, and it actually brought back memories because we performed it in high school. So kind of singing along in my head, but it was a great evening.
Thank you. Mrs. Fleischer?
Thank you. As Mr. Mayor said, I had a wonderful time at the Unsung Heroes at West with Dr. Malash and many of the administration, which was great to see everybody out there. And he explained how wonderful it was. And I have to say, also, it went down to the entire school getting involved, the ROTC helping with the parking and working with the Cherry Hill Police Department, to the catering that was from the kids at West, which was amazing. So it was a really wonderful thing to be involved with. I also attended virtually, we're still doing this, from the Garden State Coalition meeting. Every month, the superintendents meet, superintendents around the state, as well as board members. They work together And Dr. Malash also sits on the committee, and they talked about actually wellness for administration. I thought it was really great, and hope that we can bring things even more here, because I know it's stressful as for teachers, administration, for everyone still, because we're still trying to get over COVID. Then I actually attended virtually the Flipgrid event that had Ibram X. Kendi, who talked about anti-racism and how to incorporate that into all different levels of schooling. He has written many New York Times bestsellers, and it was wonderful to hear him speak. The next thing I went to is the Camden County Addiction Awareness Task Force. I sit on that, and the superintendent of schools for Camden County was there, Mr. Darrell, and he spoke about getting the schools more and more involved with the county. And there's a big issue with fentanyl in our county, and our county committee, the county overall is taking a very strong stance on trying to make awareness, and talked about Narcan being in all schools because of the unfortunate incident of this child, the 12-year-old child who had passed away of accidental fentanyl poisoning, and found out, Dr. Malash had told us that a while ago, Narcan is in all the schools and with all the police officers. We're ahead of the game with that. We hope that we never have to use it, but it's nice that Cherry Hill is forward thinking, I think, a lot more than some of the districts in our county. So we should be very proud of that, at least, and continue to look forward to things like that. And lastly, I was able to go to a very moving thing from the Jewish Federation. Some of the leadership, Jennifer Weiss and Harry Platt from our area, they actually went to the Ukraine-Poland border last week. They went for 3 days. Our community was wonderful. They collected over 1,000 pounds of medical supplies to bring with them. They had 20 bags of 60, it was over $650,000 worth of things to bring directly to the border. And it was a send off for them. And it's wonderful that we're able as a community to get behind Ukraine in this, very difficult time. So I was very happy to be part of that. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I had a chance to do a couple things at the school level that were pretty fun. First is Matilda Jr. Take this to, so Matilda Jr. was really wonderful, and I was singing along. And my youngest wants to be he goes with me to all the shows now. So he was also with me on Bye Bye Birdie, which Carusi did. So Matilda Jr. at Beck, Bye Bye Birdie, Young Performers Edition at Carusi. Just great to see the talent, the excitement, the camaraderie, the technology, just the flexibility in the space. Really entertaining, really, really well done. Really great students, obviously, but to pull that off, the adults, I know worked long hours and hard. And then I got to go back to Sharp Elementary School for International Night on April 7th. That was very nice. I want to say there was food from at least 15 countries, and they had a very cute parade. And it was darling. I thought I had shot the first promo for that event, but I was in it, so I could not have possibly shot the promo. So someone else shot a promo when we brought it to that school community back in another lifetime when I wore a different hat, but wonderful to come back. And then really the highlight for me, or at least one of the 4 highlights since we've been together last, was I got the chance to go to Carusi to an event called Music Spans the Entire Universe of Learning. An hour very well spent. Now, the musicians at Carusi had gone to Rowan University. They had received a mark of superior, which is the highest ranking you can get in competition. They'd gotten a 96.5 out of 100. At least that's what my memory tells me. I hope that's correct. Extraordinarily talented. I can only say about the event, which I think every board member should go at least once, is I looked over at my wife at the end and she said, I should pick back up the saxophone. And I looked at her and said, I should pick up any instrument and start this. It was really it was a lot of fun. It was interactive. It was interesting. Students were great, but it's led by a very amazing staff member as well. So kudos to them. Kudos to everybody here. And that's what I did. Thanks. Next, we'll go to Ms. Stern.
So I don't have any supporting materials like Mr. Avadia, but I was also excited to go to the shows both at Beck and also Carusi to see Matilda and also Bye Bye Birdie. And like Miss Friedel, I remember the last time I saw Bye Bye Birdie, actually for me, it was, I would think it was a summer stock program that happened at my elementary school. So I was very young, but somehow a lot of the lyrics came back to me. But you know, what was so awesome about both shows was, first of all, to see how many kids were engaged, how much fun they had, how hard they worked, and how invested the students and the staff were in really, you know, bringing some interactive live experience. And I read through the Bye Bye Birdie program, and there were some student interviews. And the majority of the students, it was like the second or third line, they reflected on making friends, how good it was and important it was. And I think if we ever doubt the importance of what we're doing, you know, on this board and what our administration and the staff and the teachers are all doing, educating kids, how important friendships are, how important these social relationships are, how there's so much more to the school learning experience than just filling out a worksheet, not to demean that stuff. To me, it's like it really reinforces that, you know, this is what the kids know. This is why they love being in their school for hours and hours and hours at a time. And it makes them better students. So, and, you know, I think the talent was phenomenal. I mean, I don't really understand how young kids can sing so well, but they can. And I saw that also, by the way, at the East Coffee House, which I went to. It's another, a lot of performing arts, which was pretty cool. I went there on Saturday night. It was just a really cool night for a whole bunch of really mixed bunch of kids. It really was just a lot of different kids who just wanted to be there to perform, whether it was instruments or singing, is what the pieces I saw, and their friends and other kids who wanted to support them. They were drank coffee like older people do. They raised money for a really important, I think it was an eating disorders organization. So it was charitable. I mean, it was just so many aspects of it. That was really neat. That was all like the fun stuff. I guess there was one more it was pretty neat. And that was going last night to the town council meeting where we had 2 students from Cherry Hill, our high schools, who were honored, 2 female wrestlers. So that's a newer sport to our district. And one of the female wrestlers from Cherry Hill East actually got first place in the state for female wrestling. That's a pretty amazing accomplishment. And apparently that is the first wrestling championship that has been won since 1989 in Cherry Hill East. And she is, I think, a junior. That's Maya Hemo. And then Ari Tyson from West, who's a freshman, got 3rd in the state for women's wrestling or girls wrestling. And that's the first time that West has won for wrestling since 2002. So really cool stuff. So the last district related event that I went to was I sit as the liaison for the mental health task force, and the mental health task force met on April 6th. So there was a lot of good information shared that I just want to pass along to my fellow board members. So the first thing was actually that ESS, which is Effective School Solutions, which was the organization that we contract with to provide a lot of the mental health supports, resources, and services in our district. They're sponsoring 6 parent learning programs this summer. That will be open to any parents in the district. And I think maybe even possibly open to community too. ESS also is responsible for administering the current, the mental health screening that is offered to all high school students. They had 80 students at East participate this year and 60 at West. There was a great discussion. One of the staff members brought up having seen a very engaging and kind of really fascinating to Mrs. Fleischer's point about the opioid epidemic. As a a motivational speaker named Chris Herron, who is well known, and he's actually quite a few members on the mental health task force had heard him speak. So he is he was a very successful and accomplished professional athlete who also became addicted to opioids and struggled with substance abuse. And he's now a motivational speaker. He's spoken at some other, this staff member actually saw him speak at her child's school. That's a neighboring school. And I know he has spoken at other neighboring schools. And so there was discussion, wouldn't it be great to bring him to Cherry Hill to speak to our students and families? So that was really interesting. There was a person who's a staff member from the University of Pennsylvania who does working on staff wellness in the district, and really looking at supporting staff mental health. I think our job as the board is to focus predominantly on the well-being of our students, but we obviously know that related to that is the staff's well-being and of course parents' well-being and family well-being. So there's efforts to understand from the district perspective that it's important to support the staff. This pandemic especially has really wreaked some havoc on the people who do for others. That includes our teachers. So there's going to be a wellness event in May, and the person from University of Pennsylvania was really wanting input on some programming suggestions too in terms of what would be most useful. And then the last piece that I want to highlight was a really good discussion, which to me is relevant to our discussion about the equity audit. Maybe it's a little bit of a far reach, but I think it's connected in terms of, making sure we're doing right by our students and how we deal with issues. We talk more about the just discipline issues, but the mental health task force is looking at what's referred to as S2 in the district, the S12 procedure, not to be confused with the fair funding legislation S2, sorry, S12 procedure, which is a procedure that our district instituted about 10 years ago when we had, very unfortunately, some tragic losses of students to suicide. And at that point, the district and the board really put together a procedure that, or I guess with the board's support and backing, of assessing any student who makes a gesture or verbalizes any suicidal or homicidal behavior, that the student has to leave school and go get evaluated and cleared by a mental health professional that they're safe to be to return to school. So there's a lot of discussion about, there really needs to be more consideration of the age of these students, and especially our young students who are spending a lot of time probably making all kinds of gestures and language and in their pretend play, and perhaps in also in trying to deal with conflict issues or difficult emotional issues. They probably say a lot of things. I mean, I think even we as adults probably find ourselves saying phrases that might fall under S12 here and there under duress. But I'm so frustrated. I just want to harm a person or harm a situation. I don't know. Adults say things like that. Kids definitely say things like that. And we want to distinguish and make sure that we're, absolutely addressing kids who are really struggling with these issues and creating an environment that's dangerous for others or for themselves. But we want to make sure it's done in a way that probably makes a little more sense, because kids are some kids who are experiencing this, kids who may have some struggles that haven't been fully addressed, and they're coming out in school, in the school environment, are ending up, having to leave school and going to maybe a hospital or something. It's a scary experience for a lot of parents and kids, so who have to go through that. So I'm thrilled that that's being looked at. I think it's a really great step on the district's behalf to recognize that has to be addressed, and it's already in process, and that was discussed at the mental health task force. So it's not yet 45 minutes. I mean, it's cool.
Right. That wasn't a personal allotment. Dr. Rude, you're next.
Okay, so I was able to take a quick walk over to Woodcrest Elementary yesterday for their story walk. I have to write it down. I can't remember titles and names. So the book was Change Sings by Amanda Gorman, and I had no idea what to expect for a story walk, but what they had was each page of the story on a little in a little station all along the walk leading up to the past the playground to their brand new little shade pavilion. And the book was beautifully illustrated and very poetic in its words. So I got in line and made sure I read all of the book. Along the way, the kids were able to pick up little souvenirs, pencils, bags. I took they had these little seed papers that you can just plant the paper and it grows plants. So I'll see if my black thumb can turn green. It was a really delightful little event at the end, near the end of the story as you walk along to the stations. There were some little instruments for the kids to play. So I'm sure as the event wore on, the cacophony around the Shade Pavilion grew. It was just starting when I was there. And it was really a lovely little event. I loved watching these young children, be so excited to read at each station. Some kids read, some kids, their parents read to them. It was beautiful. And it was also, the event was great. It was also nice to see some of our infrastructure making the staff smile. And I heard a little conversation about the possible outdoor classroom or different things they can do with their new pavilion. I really look forward to seeing more of that too. So that was lovely. And I saw that we got our board was given our copy of East Side, the High School East newspaper tonight. And just a shout out to them. I was told by my child that East Side has won national acclaim by receiving a Pacemaker Award for the 2022 year, which 20 basically is the top 20 newspapers, high school newspapers in the country, and it's affectionately dubbed the High School Pulitzer. So congratulations to them. So yeah, I got to see some of the extraordinary things going on with our language arts and things that are working to increase our students' reading. So that was lovely.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Root. All right. So we're going to move to our first public comment. All right. So here's what I read before public comment. Cherry Hill is a community that values education, and educational topics often bring out passionate response. The Cherry Hill Board of Education supports a school climate in which our diversity is a source of strength and all are included. Respect is foundational in how we treat you, how we treat each other, and how we support our administration and staff in their essential work. Please join us in practicing the utmost respect for all. And I would remind you a couple things. One, students can participate whenever. Doesn't have to be a board agenda item, but for adults, for non-students in our district, you get, the first one, please identify the agenda item that you would be speaking about. That's 17 to 20. So which specific one? For everyone, state your name and municipality. And we will have each comment be a maximum of 3 minutes. And so we generally, I think, start in the room. Anyone for public comment one? And then I've got to figure out how to see. Oh, okay. All right. Well, then we will start. Did you want to come up? I think, do we go one at a time? Okay, 3 minutes. Okay, so if you come together, it's 3 minutes. And if you come separately, but in succession, well, but here's the thing, we alternate between online and here. So you would be interrupted. So it's a Faustian deal of either, yeah. So do you want the 3 minutes together or you'll start?
No, I'll just start.
Floor is
I don't
yours.
have anything like really prepared because I found out about this meeting at the last minute.
Okay,
But
just start with your name and municipality.
sure, Becky Sluzarski from Kingston here. And I have 2 girls, one in elementary, another in middle school. And I was just coming to just find out your thoughts or what's been planned for the new curriculum that I heard that's coming out in the fall of 2022.
Okay, so for the first public comment, it has to be agenda items. So agenda items are things we're actually voting on tonight.
Oh, okay.
So this is a perfectly valid public comment, but for the second session.
Gotcha. Okay. All right.
Yeah, so
This is my
please-
first board meeting. So
Absolutely.
I don't
No,
know
no,
the
no.
rules
Hey,
here, so
I've done it more times than I
Okay.
care to remember, but we invite
Okay.
you back for the second public comment.
second, and do you know when that is then?
Oh, here's
Like,
hoping.
another 2 hours or I have children at home I have to get to.
Hard to say. I would say 9:30 or later, probably to start. That would be my guess.
That's a shame for, people that are coming here that have children late at night, to want to try to voice.
I know.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, if you want to go, you are able to participate remotely as well. So you could call in from home. As a matter of fact, 23 other people have done it. So perfectly valid. All right, I'm going to start then on the line with Dr. Podowitz.
Hi, Jeff Podowitz. I live in Cherry Hill. The item is 18.2. 18.2 specifications for the procurement of vendor to provide parking lot mill and overlay project at Cherry Hill East High School. Base bid was $163,982. That's not including any additional courts. Question, can any of the related work done be by the township? And what is the approximate acre amount of the parking lot mill and overlay project? I'm also going to refer to the Business and Facilities Committee report found in tonight's agenda, and it states that that the bid to address the parking area in front of the tennis courts to accommodate access to the courts and alleviate parking issues since these courts are open to the public, and I suppose this is the bid they're talking about, and they were prepared about 10 to 12 years ago. And it seemed to be a joint effort between the school district and the township. Can the township help with this? And there are 5 tennis courts there, and it's a joint effort. And since it appears that this will be finished over spring break, weather permitting, why could the township and the school district work together to accommodate access to these courts? Note that $160,000 is not a trivial amount of money. Typically, an acre of parking area could accommodate 144 parking spaces. If the bid for the parking lot mill and overlay project at Cherry Hill East is only for a quarter acre, that's approximately 36 cars that would be accommodated. However, if it's only a quarter acre, the cost per space would then be approximately $15 a square foot, which actually is exceedingly high for this work. So what is the approximate acreage for this? And I guess that's my question. What is the approximate acreage? Is this for the is this for that space, which means that it'd be closer to 18 spots for five tennis courts, and then you would even go even higher. You're talking about $30 a square foot for repair, and even at $15 a square foot, it's not even a repair. It actually approaches total replacement. So I just want a breakdown of what the numbers really are, and I hope you answer my questions, because $162,000. If it is just a quarter of an acre, is high. And if it's an eighth of an acre.
Thank you, Dr. Podowitz. We appreciate you calling in. Anyone else in the room? Because we do have Lisa, who's up next on the line.
Good evening. My name is Lisa Law. I'm a parent of a student at Carusi West and Thomas Paine. You talked about mental health with ESS. Mr. Mayor talked about bullying with athletes against bullying. In the equity audit slideshow, you also talked about discipline.
For the first public comment, it's agenda items that we're voting on tonight. So the presentation that we had wouldn't count for this one. You're welcome to make this comment. It would just be the second public comment period.
Okay, wherever you want me to do it, I'll do it.
Okay, thank you. Next, we'll go with Ann Einhorn on the line.
Ann Einhorn, Cherry Hill, New Jersey. 19.2, the retirement of Valerie Schmidt Sadwin. Valerie, thank you for trying all these years to make your numbers understandable to the general public. I've known you for a very long time. You're clear, you're concise, you're patient, and I don't know how you did this job, but I appreciate everything that you've done over the years, and you're going to be very hard to replace in my eyes. So good luck on your retirement. I hope you have great health and great times moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. And that will take us to our board work session. We're going to do it this way for the first time in a long time. And we'll start with curriculum and instruction, and I'll start by passing it to Mrs. Arroyo.
Thank you, Ben. Actually, I was unable to attend last week, but I like to kick it over to Corinne, who chaired our meeting, and my colleagues who were participating. Thank you.
Okay, so we had a very productive meeting. Some of the highlights were we had talked about Autism Acceptance Month recognition. So April is Autism Acceptance Month, and there's several of our schools that are doing different things to highlight the month and honor the month properly, including Payne specifying a day to wear blue, Woodcrest doing some t-shirt and pretzel sales. And then one of the bigger highlights is on our website. There's actually a slideshow of recognition for the month. And I believe it was put together by an employee of one of our schools as well, and then posted. So that was something that we discussed in the very beginning. And then, hold on, back to my notes. Okay, and then school start times. That was a topic that we talked about as well. And Dr. Morton shared the feedback from the thought exchange and just shared with us some of the highlights from those that participated. And we really talked about, you know, what happened or what was said at the town hall meeting as well, and tried to like go through what most things were recurring of the family's responses, and then also being realistic with who responded and taking a deep dive into that. But we all also came to the kind of agreement that with the recent legislation coming forward, that there's some things that us as a board and as a district, we should have in consideration so that we're not doing things more than one time, because the possible legislation could lead to it being very specific as to what we can or can't do with start times. So very much still on the table of where to go, and Dr. Morton and his team are doing really well with that. The next thing we talked about was just a middle school schedule, and it was an exploratory discussion, and we got some updates regarding the new middle school schedule, and then that was shared with us on February 22nd, but we basically got some updates of what has occurred since that meeting, and how the plan has just been kind of formalized. And we're going to move to 4 exploratory periods, and that way allow each school to obtain additional ELA teacher support. And Dr. Morton really talked to us specifically about how this shift and what we may be used to with the schedule will help us to actually spread the resources more equitably around the middle schools. And this will be actually something new for some of the schools that hadn't had the ability to have these resources before. And if I miss anything or mess anything up, please jump in. Okay. And then finally, we talked about, not finally, because I think there's one more thing, STEM and CTE career pathways discussion. So we all got really excited about this one. because we're going to have a full board presentation by our new principal at Cherry Hill West. She's doing some amazing work in the realm of CTE, and she's put together something really comprehensive for the plan for how West will move forward, and what we're going to do there. So Dr. Morton didn't want to take away the shine of that, but he did give us a little trailer version, and we all got really excited. And he shared a couple things about how Cherry Hill has one of the most robust STEM course offerings in New Jersey, with a total of 36 STEM courses being offered at our comprehensive high schools. So that was really big. And I believe that we also had our student board reps in attendance for that committee meeting. And it was really cool to hear them share how they have actually been taking some of the newer courses that have been offered in the CTE world in the last year or two. So it's really been a benefit to have that youth voice there, because they actually put give us more of the qualitative story that we like to hear to go with all the data. So really excited again about the CTE and where we're going, and I can't wait to hear what our new principal at Cherry Hill West comes with. So everybody be ready to pay attention on April 26th. And I think that was everything. Dr. Morton, Dr. Mayhem, am I missing anything? Good. Any committee members like to add anything that was missing that day?
So I'm trying to read my scribble. But I believe when we were talking about the Autism Acceptance Month, Miss Mallory mentioned that we will have 4 new classrooms, 3 at the elementary level and 1 at middle school level. So new autism classrooms in the district for 22-23.
Thank you, Ms. Friedel. Anyone else from the committee want to share anything? Okay, yes.
I'll just share with the committee. There was, I think, only one public member at the meeting. And she did share a public comment regarding the school start times, and her perspective was as her child is graduating, I guess, this year. So she's talking about being a single parent through the years and the start times. And from her perspective, at elementary level, it's much easier to get after school care than it is to get before school care. So in looking at the start times from her perspective, it would be make more sense for elementary to start earlier and have to worry about aftercare, as opposed to having them starting later and then you're looking for morning care that doesn't exist. So I just wanted to share that.
No, that's great. And Dr. Morton?
Yeah, just one comment, Ms. Elmore Stratton. So CTE will be offered at both high schools. I think you said at High School West. So I just
Yes,
wanted to
I'm sorry.
clarify that. It will be at both high schools.
Thank you for that. I think I got really excited because this principal is one that I've read a lot on, amazing things she's done in that world, and I can't wait. So thank you for clarifying that. And then I believe the comment from the public also wanted to, the parent had asked about us making sure that we share what's happening at the middle school level, what can happen at the high school level. And so we shared some of those opportunities that will come up towards the end of the school year, where students can hear about the high schools as they get ready to get to that level. So I believe that's all. I sent all these notes to Ms. Arroyo, and Dr. Mahan sent notes to Ms. Arroyo as well. And I think that's it.
Wonderful, thank you. We'll go to BNF and Ms. Stern.
Okay, so we also met on April 5th. We had maybe not quite as exciting, but some good updates. A good amount of our discussion focused on the completion of, or the soon to be completed tennis courts over at High School East. We are just basically in the final stages of completing the work, and what's holding up the work is we need a succession of 50 degrees or more days. So I guess maybe we're coming into that. I don't know. Hopefully the work will start to be able to be done. As I think we've talked about many times before, or in the past, these tennis courts were hit by a windstorm and damaged them. And because of that, we needed to repair them. And the repair is being covered by insurance, both the insurance from the school district and also from the township, because that's what was determined ultimately by the insurance companies. But that was the responsibility was 50-50. So that's what's covering most of the repairs. But one of the things we wanted to make sure is that if you're going to spend the money, do it right. And so we added in some dollars above the insurance reimbursement of our to work on to fix some of the drainage issues that were underneath the tennis courts. So the work was more involved, and although we don't want it to have to be, that's what it ended up being. That work is almost complete. There obviously have been some delays, partly because of weather and partly because of COVID, but it's almost done. And I think that the community will be very happy. I think the students who play tennis will be very happy. So it'll be good to have that done. And part of that work in discovering the issues that were related to the tennis court was also related to a parking lot, which is literally, borders the tennis courts. There was some pavement issues and, I guess related to water over time, and just settlement of the earth. So that area has been redone. And what's nice is they're going to be redone, and or in the process of being redone. But what's nice is they're actually going to gain one parking space. So we're not losing any parking spaces because it's a small space. And actually going to put a little median strip in that is going to be a little bit of a buffer for the parking area and the place where traffic goes by, because it's along the drive. So I think that'll be nice, creating a little bit of a safety improvement as well as obviously in better shape. So, I think these are not like the most exciting projects, but they're ones that need to be done and will benefit our students and the community who uses those areas. And board members had a lot of questions about the accessibility and the ADA compliance for the courts. And we went through in some detail about that, and it's nice to hear just how many pieces are of thought in terms of and the importance of compliance in terms of the placement of the doors and the access, the ramps, all that stuff, or the sidewalk. So it was just really, it was good to have some clarification on all that and validation of that. So other upcoming capital projects, there's actually the ADA work is due to be done to start is if the board does approve the award, which is of course the lowest bid, which is what's required of us to accept the lowest bid. And we on ADA work that's being done at Beck and also at Payne. And this is like access on from the parking lot and the doors, the entrances, some of the entrances. So that's the work that is going to be done there. And also we have been waiting to replace some of the generators at the schools. So Mann, Payne, and Sharp are due to have generators installed, but unfortunately there are, surprise, delays in receiving them. So we're hoping that will start to be done in the fall. We hope the generators should be coming in by that point. So also on the public hearing on the budget initial submission was the budget was submitted in the initial submission to the county office for review. And then we should have a final board approval of the final budget once it comes back in our April 26th meeting. There was discussion about meal service and meal prices. So the meal service, it's been a really great thing that, throughout this pandemic, the federal government has ensured that all students had access to free meals. Unfortunately, that's going away, and we have no indication that that's going to renew. So we're looking at the end of June will be the last free meal distribution to all students, in which case it goes back to the way things were before. The good news is that a lot of families who were eligible for the free or reduced lunch have signed up this year. There was an increased participation in the application, and I hope that continues because that's been a challenge for the year after year that we've heard about as a board. Families who don't sign up and who might be eligible and might be food insecure but aren't getting those meals. So I hope that that keeps up with next year. And that was tied to some of the other benefits that families were receiving through the federal government. And so they were kind of linked in terms of getting set up for the free and reduced, doing that paperwork. So application for the free and reduced lunch. So some of those benefits may have changed. And so maybe we're maybe back to trying to make sure we get these families engaged with that paperwork. As we're going to have an impact. I think most people on the board know that New Jersey is very quickly inching towards the ban that's being put on plastic use and polystyrene. That will directly, I think, hopefully very positively impact our climate. Unfortunately, that, as every change happens, will also impact our food budget because purchasing alternative products for meals, for plates and all that stuff, or food containers, will be more expensive. So the district hasn't raised meal prices in a couple of years, and the last time they were raised, it was raised by a few cents for the most part. But that's probably going to be coming. We're going to have to take a look at that and decide as a board if we want to move in that direction. We also have had, because of all the federal lunch budget funding that we've gotten to cover the lunches, we've had a more robust lunch budget, and we've been able to use some of that money to replace much needed kitchen equipment that is broken or old and out of date. So we have to decide, do we want to continue to replace some of that, or do we want to use some of perhaps those funds to cover the increased cost of using new materials for food containers. So that's coming too. On a good note, the Aramark staff has increased their staff, and and in doing so, the lines are shorter, the food quality is better, they're offering more variety with foods. And we had our student reps at the meeting, and they validated that experience. The real life stories the students told us are that the food quality is better. Seemed like the lines were shorter, perhaps in West, maybe not so much at East. There's crowding at the lunch, trying to get lunch at school, but good to hear the quality is better. And I think with having a reduced number of meals to serve every day, because it's no longer going to be free and available to every student. Because of that, the staff will be able to focus on not just trying to cover, which they've been trying to kind of tread water, but they'll actually be able to do more and be more creative with the meal options. So, and then we did have some public comment. A few members of the community were at the meeting, and they asked questions and made comments about some of the ADA work at Beck, and also the timeline. There was a question asked about the timeline of the renaming of the two buildings, Malberg and Barclay, which is on the calendar for June 3rd. Thank you. So there will be exciting renaming ceremonies that day. And also some questions about the free meal program that's been going on. So that was a whole long report, not super exciting, but now you guys know. So questions, comments from board members? And additions, please, first from the committee members, Mrs. Fleischer. Sorry.
Thank you, Mrs. Stern. One of the other things I just wanted to point out was we did have a few people there from the public, and one of the things that they had asked about was the picnic benches that had been ordered. And then correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Malasher and Mrs. Sugars, that all the benches are in except for the accessible ones. They're waiting because the supply chain issues. So hopefully that will be in, do we know when, or hopefully by the new school year? Is that what we're hoping?
We're hoping for soon.
Okay.
Definitely by the new academic year, we hope. But we're hoping for sooner, before the end of this academic year would be great.
And actually, if I can keep you on the mic, Dr. Malash, because one of the things that I thought was really interesting in bringing up what Mrs. Stern had said about the free and reduced lunch, when people fill that out, I didn't realize how many other things that people qualify for besides just the free and reduced lunch if they qualify for it. Do you mind going through the list? Because I found it very enlightening and I think it's very helpful for people. Thank you.
Yes, thanks, Ms. Fleischer. We always encourage all families to fill out the free and reduced lunch application at the beginning of the academic year. Families can fill it out at any time. There is a rolling approval procedure that takes place. If family situation changes or something in life changes, then they can apply or change their application during the course of the year. But especially for our secondary students, there are additional opportunities that are open for them if they qualify for free or reduced meals. In terms of work with the College Board, cost of AP exams can be waived, SAT cost waivers, ACT waivers, college application waivers. There are different additional support services that are available to them from a number of different resources. There's additional scholarship money that could be available to children and to families, but it does open up a whole new window of opportunity for kids. It's more than just what it looks like for breakfast and for lunch on a daily basis, but it really does help to provide. We talked about equity earlier, and the difference in opportunities and experiences that children have before they arrive at our doorstep in the morning. This is another piece that'll help families to achieve some level of equity in terms of what their children have access to.
Thank you very much. And also the activity fee, right, for the district? That's
Yes,
included
the
too?
activity fee would automatically be waived.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for all
Thanks,
that
Jen.
information. I appreciate it.
Actually, just to kind of piggyback on that, and this is a little bit exciting for me because I'm always talking about alternative funding and grant funding. Some of you who are in the high school level community, and I don't know, maybe it also went to the other communities, but as parents, we got letters or emails saying that there's new technology, new Chromebooks coming in, and that was from a grant that is from the federal government, and that came out of part of what qualified us was also looking at our numbers of families who were in socioeconomic need. So there's this far-reaching impact that can happen that our district was able to help get upgrades to technology. And there are, I went to the one, session on it. Like millions and millions of dollars out there for lots of different things. And some of those grants are based on, are we demonstrating as a district that we have a certain percentage of families in need in that way socioeconomically, because we want to make sure that we're giving opportunities to all of our families and all of these students. So in a very strange way, you start to see the reality of that happening. So it's well, to me, it was not strange, surprising. So it's critically important that we continue to get that message out as a board and as a district. Other things I might have missed or left out?
Oh, you definitely didn't leave anything out. It was very comprehensive. Just to add just a little more detail on the tennis courts, it wasn't more, this was a lot more than just resurfacing, repaving of parking and repainting of lines. There was a tremendous amount of work that needed to be done on drainage, accessibility, and also, as you mentioned, to increase the safety of the traffic flow around that with the addition of an additional space. So it's the number looks large if you're only looking at, as I looked at it first, because I wasn't aware, frankly, of how much work was actually being done. It was actually a tremendous amount of work done, and a huge chunk of that was contributed by the township. So that was good to see.
Other questions or comments from other non-committee board members? Dr. Rude?
I just want to follow up on what Dr. Malash said. So are all of the opportunities for aid filtered through the application for food assistance?
No, there are definitely other opportunities for aid for students at the secondary level. It looks a little bit different because of the things with which older kids are involved with. At the elementary level, often they come through those forms it could impact other things that where there's a cost associated with it. But that is, one metric that is often used or requested for additional services to be provided.
So is that used in a way that like it might flag and create a flag that allows, people to suggest that these other services are there, or how do people know to go look for the service?
Yes. And it works in conjunction. Now, families can qualify for free and reduced meals and not necessarily need, other pieces. But it provides that opportunity where those children are identified and can be matched up with the services that are provided at the schools. We identify a number of our schools as Title I schools, which are the schools that receive additional federal funding based on the percentage of students that qualify for free and reduced meals. It allows us to target assistance in terms of additional staff, additional technology, additional tutoring, depending upon what there's a committee that will get together in each one of the schools, make the determination through a needs assessment about what they want to focus on during the course of the year. And then from there, they'll make a determination about how to spend those monies. But those are additional federal funds that we receive each year as well.
Okay, thank you. I just think it's really important for families to know that there are so many resources out there. And, so you may think, just, food insecurity can sometimes make people feel embarrassed or ashamed, but there's really there's no shame in requesting the help that's available to you. And it's nice to know that people are being informed that those opportunities are there. So I encourage people to take advantage.
Agreed. Thank you, Dr. Rood. And it's done, it's handled in a discrete manner. There are limited people that have that awareness, at each one of the schools. It's a need to know, piece. Not all the staff members know who qualifies for free and reduced meals. It's much cleaner than it was years and years ago in terms of that identification. So the children can be included in terms of what takes place.
Yes, Friedel.
Yeah, just two things. So number one, with the free meals potentially ending in June, I think it's really important, especially probably with our younger age kids, to get the message out so that students who are used to getting breakfast and lunch and having no cost don't just continue when the school year starts and then their parents get this bill for an amount of money. And, the kid ate it, but didn't know. So I just think we need to be proactive in making sure we get that message out early and often. My other question is about the equipment. Since we contract with Aramark for the food service, is the district responsible for purchasing all of the equipment, even though it's a contract, and the equipment is ours? So if for some reason Aramark was not our vendor, the equipment stays. Yeah, okay.
Yes. And that's why it's also, when you think about all the facilities work that we're trying to do and looking ahead at a bond, and you look in our kitchens, any of you have had the pleasure of seeing the kitchens in our schools, they need work too, and you think about wear and tear and all that. So yeah, they're definitely ours, and we get to keep all that stuff because we're paying for it. So, and I'm happy we've been able to do that this year. So. Any other questions, comments? Anybody who is online with us? Just make sure I don't miss any hands. Okay. And that is all for BNF.
Okay, we'll turn to HR and Mrs. Elmore Stratton.
Sure. So for HR, go back to my notes. Everyone knows HR committee, not much I can share, but I will give you another trailer. And say that we discussed some of the proposed changes for our positions that are currently listed as temporary in an effort to work on that recruitment goal that we have right now to get more folks in and to be more competitive and comparable to districts of our size. So you can look for those changes for us to be voting on soon. And then we have some new job descriptions that we reviewed that won't be on this week's for us to vote on, but for something that will come in later months for some positions where we have folks retiring and things of that nature and needed to make those edits that we discussed in terms of our 3 bullets that we added that are our goals that we said, I think we gave you a report on about a year ago that we were adding to all job descriptions. And that's all I'm able to share. Looking at Ms. Nancy, good? Good. Okay, anyone committee? Okay. Take it away, Mr. Avadia.
All right, off to P&L and Ms. Friedel.
So I don't think I can be as quick as Mrs. Elmore Stratton, but I will try to be concise and give you as much information as we need. So we met on Tuesday, April 5th from 6:30 to 7:30. And we had three primary topics for discussion. The first was really it would be, I guess, a creation of a new policy on board member participation at board meetings using electronic devices. So we've had conversations about should board members be able to participate remotely and under what circumstances. So we really need to develop a policy because this will impact boards to come, not just those of us sitting around the table today. So our committee discussed the need for a clear and consistent standard for board members who may be participating remotely and using electronic devices. In our discussion, we talked about considerations for extenuating circumstances, participation in executive session, standards for camera use during meetings, and the number of remote meetings that would be acceptable. I acknowledged that this bylaw and policy will impact bylaw 0145, which is board member resignation and removal, which we are going to discuss in the May committee meeting because we want to make sure we are consistent and that the policies make sense in isolation and together. So the committee that we as a committee, which we are now bringing information to you as the board, we felt that there needs to be a limit on the number of meetings that are accessed remotely. And we had discussions if it should be one per quarter, should there be a consecutive number that you cannot exceed. And we also talked about when people are requesting this, that it should be an executive session discussion, which of course we need Paul to weigh in on if that would be an appropriate discussion in executive session. The second item that we discussed was the annual calendar. We put our calendars out in advance. So we were looking at the 2024-2025 school year calendar. We looked at a draft. We made some suggestions for revisions to the calendar, just some dates and times. And we talked about should staff developments be before Labor Day? Should it be split? How it looks? We also did chat a little bit about the fact that with the proposed calendar, we would once again be in a situation like we're in this year where there would be no days off from President's Day in February until spring break, which is in April. And then if there was a snow day, the President's Day would be taken away, and then the last day off would have been in January. And just the mental health, the break and so forth. And one of the student reps had identified that at the high school level, there's professional development that happens. And I guess it happens during the day. And because there's been a lack of subs, what that means is that 200 students are put in the cafeteria because there's no teacher to cover a class. So we had briefly talked about, professional development days, could there be an early dismissal day in February or March or something to break it up a little bit. Typically, Cherry Hill does not do that. It causes a lot of issues with aftercare and so forth, but it was part of our discussion. The other item that we discussed was code of conduct. So Mrs. Wethington provided an update on the status of the code of conduct. There are 3 committees that are meeting, one at each level, so elementary, middle, and high school. And they are working on a document for each of those grade levels. The committee is planning, to hold focus groups with staff, students, and parents in May, June, and get feedback on the drafts. The timeline will not have the code of conduct in place when school opens in the fall, although it would be anticipated that the document will be completed in the fall, but not for opening of school. So we did talk about the fact that there are items in the current code of conduct that are not current. So it refers to like value options, it refers to some programs that do not exist in the district, and that at a minimum, we should be updating for September, taking out things that don't exist, putting in what is current and accurate. So that recommendation was accepted, and that will occur for the beginning of the school year while we wait for the revised code of conduct for the school year. We had one public comment that was about the board member participation. And the commenter felt very strongly that the board member should be attending in person, that, you know, it's a commitment that has been made to the community. I'm trying to paraphrase, but it was a very felt that it was very important for the board members to be present and in person. Any committee members who have anything to add that I may have missed?
I just wanted to clarify when Ms. Friedel, when we were talking about, and Mr. Avadia, I remember we were, because you were the other person there. When we were talking about, first of all, I said, I'm one of the members of the committee who said, I think that we have to be forward thinking as far as the future, but also forward thinking to where our world is now, especially now seeing that things are starting to come back, right? So I happen to be one of them that is open to the discussion, knowing that there should be boundaries, but that there can be, you know, even tonight we have people virtual. But I want to go specifically to the part where it said that 1 per quarter. And I think that was based on the fact that our original policy, and I might be wrong, Paul, I'm not sure if you know off the top of your head, Mr. Green, is that that it was action meetings. Do you remember specifically had said, right, that it was action meetings, and that's what made it go down to like 1, because there's only 1 action meeting per month, meaning that,
Yes, your
right?
policy actually is different from the statute. The statute
Okay.
talks about 3 consecutive meetings. Your policy actually carves out more and says, defines it as the monthly action meeting.
And my recollection was that Mrs. Wethington was going to speak with Mr. Green about that, because we have action at every board meeting. So should it really be basically one every other meeting, the last meeting of the month, and that's 3 consecutive, which, or is it, you know, work session action, because there's action at both. So
Like the word action might have been, like it's sort of antiquated as for what it was written originally, based on what we do now.
Right, your
correct?
practice has changed from when that policy was done.
thank you. Mr. Avadia?
Yeah, so, and I think part of this is revisiting it next month with the other policy together. But I would say by next month, probably we'll be ready for the full board to weigh in, because obviously to take it forward, we'd need to do that. So yeah, so Mr. Green. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions from board members? Ms. Stern?
Just regarding the changes in the code of conduct. So how does that relate to our policy? I mean, what, and you may not know this. I know we have a cycle of when we look at policies, but you know, if we're looking at code of conduct for the fall, I would assume we have to also look at our policies about it. And obviously it's pretty timely giving the discussion about, you know, how we're handling conduct in our schools and stuff with our students and equities. So I don't know if you know that answer, Ms. Friedel, or if not, that's okay.
I don't have the policy in front of me, but we can pull it up, I guess.
Well, not to look at it, but just wondering, like, is there a relevance to us visiting it as a board, our policy and making sure that
Well, I
it's-
think it would make sense that,
We have
I
to,
mean,
yeah.
we can take a look at the policy itself and see if there's any updates that need to go with it as we're going hand in hand with a new code of conduct.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
If you don't mind, I'll just add in here and maybe Ms. Swethington, you can add in if I'm saying this correctly. But I know the policy is that we have to update this yearly. And right now it's not being done because there's a very strong change in what's going on. Like this is sort of a revamping of the entire thing that hasn't been done in a long time. So that's why we're sort of in this weird, area, this gray area right now. And that's why we're doing short-term updating until we come out with the brand new code of conduct in the fall. Am I right there? And then from there on, it's going to be a lot easier updating it yearly because everything doesn't have to be redone every single year. Am I right with that, Mrs. Swethington?
Almost. I just want to remind you that Dr. Malash did share in the meeting that Mr. Saporito updates it yearly to make sure that the statutory information is consistent with all the statutory changes. So technically it does get updated. What we haven't updated are some of the things, some of the language in the text that is no longer relevant or accurate. So we will clean that up, but our view on the code of conduct is going to be different and the document will align with that. Ms. Stern, we can certainly add, it's policy 5600. We can add that, Ms. Friedel, to our queue. Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Swethington.
Thank you, Ms. Swethington.
Okay, I don't see any other questions. So Mr. Avadia.
As for strategic planning, we're still doing that in the whole with an agenda item. I'll turn it over to Mrs. Tong.
Oh, I'm trying to get my camera. Am I on the camera?
Yep, we see you, Mrs. Tong. Did you want to turn it over to Mr. Sugars?
Yes, please. Can you?
So I just wanted to give the board an update on where we stand with our project application submission. As of today, we have submitted all of our project applications to the state except for the 2 high schools. Today, I signed the documentation and that High School East should be submitted by tomorrow, and hopefully High School West will be submitted by the end of the week. On April 1st, we were assigned our first project numbers for our first 4 schools, which was Barkley, Cooper, Payne, and Kilmer. So we're very excited to get those first project numbers. And then today, we actually received our first 4 preliminary eligible cost letters for those same 4 schools, which still have to be reviewed and still have to be approved by the board at some point. More than likely, we will be approving all of those at the same time as we get all of the PEC letters back. But certainly we are on a much better course than we were the last round that we did the referendum. And so hopefully by our next meeting, we'll have some additional PEC letters returned to us.
Okay, great. That's exciting. Oh, wait a second. I guess, does anyone have questions for Mrs. Sugars from the board? Okay, that'll move us right along to our special action agenda. And that special action agenda. All right, so that's items 17 through 20. And I propose that we vote on this in a special action kind of consent agenda way. Do I have a second? I'll move it. I move it. Having moved it with the authority vested in me, I will ask if there are any questions or comments on the 17 through 20 items. Oh, I was going for the second the first time. Okay, all right. My mistake. Do I have a second? Ms. Stern, thank you for saving me. And now that we have a second, we will ask Ms. Friedel.
So I don't think that we should do it as a consent agenda because we did not do committee of the whole. I think since each committee is now back in their individual sessions. Each section should be moved by the chair of that committee.
Okay, that's compelling. Up to you, Paul. What shall I do? Okay. Doesn't sound like it. All right. Okay, so Ms. Friedel is suggesting that we amend my motion to vote by consent agenda. Who knows? But I think what we need to do is weigh in on Ms. Friedel's suggestion of an amendment to my original motion. Well, no, that we would. But we need the will of the board to do that? Or?
Well, if the movement is secondary or that, then
Okay. I'm certainly willing to all right, let's go around. We'll go around to each board member that will say if they would prefer. Okay, we'll do a show of hands. All right, if you would like to do what Ms. Friedel is suggesting, please raise your hand, either in the room or electronically, and we'll count them. And if we get to 5, then we'll do it Ms. Friedel's way. Okay, Ms. Friedel has carried the day. So section by section. All right, we will do it that way. Thank you, Ms. Friedel. Mrs. Arroyo, would you please start?
It recommends and I move the following 17.1 resolution approving professional services agreement between Cherry Hill Board of Ed and Effective School Solutions to provide mental health services. And 17.2 approval of attendance of conference and workshops for 21-22 school year. May I have a motion? Or second? I can't really see, I'm sorry.
I second.
Dr. Oh, thank you, Kim. Ms. Sugars?
First, I'm going to open up the online voting. Cast your vote. You may do so now. If there's any abstentions within 17, please let me know. Oh, I have to open it up for you. That would help. There you go.
Ms. Sugar, I cannot get to the screen.
I can cast your vote for you if you want to tell me what that is. You're on mute, Mrs.
Oh,
Thomas.
yes, for me. Thank you.
Okay, I will take care of that for you. Okay, we have a unanimous yes vote.
Okay, first try at this. Let's see if I get the language right. The superintendent recommends, and I move the following, 18.1 through 18.4. Did I do that right, Mr. Green? Yes. Are there any, is there a second? Thank you. Mrs. Fleischer. And are there any questions? Yes. 3 for 3. Okay. And seeing none, Mrs. Sugars, can we have a vote, please?
Okay, board members, the online voting is open. You may cast your votes. If there's any abstentions, please let me know.
Mrs. Sugar, I still have the technical difficulty here. I'll say yes to the 18.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, so we have a unanimous yes vote.
All right, Mrs. Elmore Stratton.
Okay, the superintendent recommends, and I move the following 19.1 to 19.6. Nope, to 0.8, I'm sorry. Any questions? And then the second. There we go, Ms. Friedel. Take it away, Ms. Sugars. You can ask for, who has a question? No, I'm just kidding. Okay. No questions? So now, Mrs. Sugars, please.
Okay, I've opened up the online voting. You may cast your votes. If there's any abstentions in this section, please let me know.
Mr. Sugar, yes for me, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, so we have a unanimous yes vote.
I'll turn it over to Dr. Melange.
Thank you, Mr. Avadia. Because we're voting on it separately, and you just approved the HR section, there are two things that I want to mention that are in here. First, one was already mentioned. It's in 19.2 and termination of employment non-certificated, and that is the retirement of Val Schmidt-Sadwin. In her role as coordinator of research and assessment, she has been an invaluable resource in our school district. You on the board have a chance to interact with Val as she has done presentations on a variety of different topics. She is an actuary by training. She's a part-time employee, and she has dedicated much of the last, or more than the last 20 years of her professional life and her family life to what has gone on in Cherry Hill. She is truly going to be missed. We will look to reform the position because Val honestly will never be replaced. And then secondly, under 19.8, I want to congratulate the board and congratulate the educational assistants of Cherry Hill for the ratification of their new contract. An excellent step forward. The educational assistants in our school district who are in all 19 of our schools, again, an invaluable resource that keep our district moving on a daily basis. So congratulations to the members of each, those men and women and what they do on a daily basis. Thrilled to see a 5-year contract that's responsible and respectful and does the right thing for everybody involved.
Thank you. All right, we'll turn to Ms. Friedel.
Okay, the superintendent recommends, and I move the following 20.1 approval of harassment, intimidation, bullying investigation decisions. Do I have a second? Dr. Rude, any questions? Seeing none, Mrs. Sugars?
Mrs. Sugars, I have to abstain from this one.
Mrs. Arroyo, because we are doing this individually, and this is the only item in the section, you can vote
Okay.
abstention directly.
Thank you.
Mrs. Sugar, I also have to abstain.
Close the online voting and the motion carries.
All right, we've got nothing to vote on for strategic planning this evening, which brings us to new business. Would any board member would like to bring an item for new business tonight? Come on, Ben. No? Okay. Mrs. Elmore Stratton.
I don't know if it's technically like business, but just a question for us to think of that was brought up in our committee meetings. This is Friedel. We were talking about SAC and some things we possibly could look at to help in that area. I forget, I think it had came up because of school start times. And one question I didn't get to ask there, and then maybe, I don't know if it ends up being a discussion here or whatnot, but could we possibly just look at the SAC rates in terms of if it's possible for us to do some sort of income-based fees, maybe, and changing I don't know what the current, if it's just one flat fee for everyone at this time, but I know that some folks in the committee discussed the fact that we can't accept third-party payees on SAC because it's not a licensed through childcare, and that's a sticky thing at the state that would have to be changed. But just wondering if maybe we could look at some ways to do it internally, and maybe look at like having a different fee scale for those that are at or below a certain poverty line, something similar to what the state does in terms of their determination for subsidy, which is in-house. So I don't know if that's actually business or just, maybe I should have brought that up in committee. I don't know.
So it would be, so just on Mr. Green's advice, it would be good. Yeah. It would be good if a committee would adopt it. Now, this could go into several committees. It could go into certainly CNI, and it could go certainly into BNF because there's a business piece to it.
I feel like it should go in a committee that I'm not on, so they could discuss it. No, just kidding.
I'm happy to take it up in BNF and add it to the calendar.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know where it fits, but wherever you guys say, as you know, chair.
BNF, if we could bake kind of the what we're looking for, and then commission sort of the expertise and what the modeling. But yeah, take it through business and facilities. Sounds good. Any other new business? All right, then we're going to go to any board member with old business. Ms. Stern.
I just wanted to ask, and maybe, I think this may be one for Dr. Mahan, if we have any updates on the summer programs. I've been hearing rumblings, and I'd love to know, if there's anything more in place.
The summer programs are going to be posted on April 14th. We have parent workshops that are SEL and supportive based. We have technology, parent education workshops that will be pre-recorded and posted for parents to see. We have summer acceleration and enrichment for our elementary school, middle school, and high school, tutoring for elementary, middle school, and high school, and credit recovery for the high school. The catalog will be posted on April 14th.
So I was 2 days too early. Thank you. That's great. That's exciting to hear that's coming out. A lot of work goes into that, so I appreciate that.
Any other old business for board members? And just make sure online. Okay, that will bring us to the second public comment, for which any topic is welcome. We want students to go first if they're still awake. We can get some rest. So please indicate if you are a student so we can do that. Otherwise, our convention is in the room to start. Is anyone from the audience? Yeah, please. Floor is yours. Please start with your name and municipality. Remember, it's 3 minutes per comment.
Prompted me to just talk about the New Jersey Health and Physical Education Guidelines that were put out in 2020 to be implemented, I believe, in the upcoming school year. Since I only have 3 minutes, I'm just going to talk about what was put in the second grade guidelines. Number one, this is what I think. 7-year-olds do not need an in-depth discussion of labeling their genitals. That's to be something for home. For older kids, not 7-year-olds. 7-year-olds don't need a classroom discussion on physical and sexual abuse. That should be a case-by-case basis, not for classroom discussion as is put in their guidelines. 7-year-olds should not talk about gender expression and gender role stereotypes. There are just 3 of the things that was in a whole list of the guidelines just for 2nd grade. So I hope that Cherry Hill does not adopt any of these guidelines for 2nd grade, which talk about sex, genitals, reproduction. They're just too young for that. And I really hope that you carefully consider what you're going to take from these guidelines that were put out in 2020 to be adopted, I believe, in the next school year. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to the line with Dr. Podowitz.
So I have Jeff Podowitz. I live in Cherry Hill. I'm reading. I recently came across a chapter in a book titled Manipulating Democracy. The chapter was entitled Manipulation and Democratic Theory. That chapter was written by Professor James Fishkin. From the chapter, page 34, we can think of deliberation and manipulation as poles on a continuum. At one end, we have good conditions, and at the other end, we have severely distorted conditions intentionally created in order to influence behavior. From an article published November 1st, 2019, updated November 7th, 2019 by Tully and Schreiber, New York Times, entitled, First, the Tuna Fish Badge of Shame, Next, Banned from the Prom. From the article, Dr. Joseph Balash issued a statement saying administrators and board members have felt vilified by media coverage that has shined a harsh and false light on our community. All states or schools, food authorities are required by the Agriculture Department to have laws governing how to handle unpaid lunch charges. New Jersey statewide last revised in 2015 required to stop feeding children with overdue lunch payments after 2 warnings and over 3 weeks. Dr. Malash sent a letter to Governor Murphy in August of that year asking that he insist on legislation that removed this language. A spokesman for the governor said he was prepared to work with the legislature on that law, a law that protects students from needless shaming or punishment for school lunch debt. I was sitting at those school board meetings. I could not understand why we, our community, were allowing ourselves to be targets of what turned out to be a statewide, national, and international debate. After I saw this article and read it, I understood reasons why. And I guess it's it also, I should say that whole tennis court area, between the tennis courts repair and whatever is being done, I don't know the square footage, it's going to be close to $700,000. And that's a lot of money for repairs only. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Short?
Rick Short, 1002 Chilton Parkway. Tonight's question is, are we following the useful idiots in the states? Useless idiots like Dr. Kinde, racist, who made this comment on video that any black professional, black or brown professional, who doesn't become an anti-racist is a racist. Unbelievable. Dr. Kinde also believes that capitalism is racist. And Dr. Kinde also believes that if I don't wake up tomorrow being an active anti-racist, that means that I am a racist. So if I don't wake up tomorrow being against serial killers, does that mean that I'm a serial killer? I mean, this is the most absurd ideology to follow. Following along, and I'll just briefly talk about a little bit about COVID and the idiots in Philadelphia. Camden County has 500,000, a population of 500,000 and had 132 cases. Philadelphia has a population of 1.5 million and had 142 cases. So at 200 cases at a population of 1.5 million, we now have to wear a mask in Philadelphia. So following again, useful idiots in Philadelphia. And then we move to the Camden schools where they mandatory mask their kids. Again, the social emotional learning effect on children is unbelievable. And what's the sickest thing that these people do in Camden, and everyone in this room should probably agree, is go to the elementary school and look at the outside of an elementary school at any Camden school, and you will see grates, almost like prison grates. So every day when they go to school, it almost looks like they're in prison. It is disgusting. Those screens on the outside of Camden elementary schools have to come off. Finally, moving along to the bond. The latest news with the bond is that inflation rates are at 8.5. It's the highest in the last 40 years. You know, I've kept my promise of not saying insane, but we're going into an insane bond. Why? Because it's the highest bond ever in the history of Cherry Hill. And it's the highest, probably the highest bond in the last 8 years. I have to check that fact. So we're practically going to be in a recession, and we're going to be putting a bond out where gas is almost $5 a gallon. And you still haven't answered my January question about the $1 million that is buried in there, which I sent an email. I have not responded. And also the $7 million question now, where we're spending $368,000 on head-end controls when we should be doing 4 individual schools, totally redoing 4 individual schools, because the experts are saying that there's going to be another wave. So we're spending $368,000 on 19 schools when we could be redoing 4 schools because the bond's going to fail anyway. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll return to the line with Lisa. Lisa, thanks for holding on. Floor is yours. Need you to unmute, Lisa.
You talked about mental health with ESS, and Mr. Mayor talked about bullying with Athletes Against Bullying visiting other schools. In the equity audit slideshow, discipline was also discussed. So my question is this: what are the numbers and how are you addressing it? How many HIBs have we had in the Cherry Hill School District this year? How many of them have been substantiated? And what are you doing to support those being harassed and intimidated in school? Are you referring the bullies to ESS? As we all know, bullying is a red flag for mental health issues. How about the victims? Are they receiving any services? I'd like some answers on this because it seems that the HIBs in this district are being brushed under the carpet, and we have a ton of children in the middle schools that are being harassed by specific individuals consistently, and those individuals consistently are permitted in the school to roam the school freely and continue to harass their victims. So are any of these steps being taken?
Hi, Lisa, we only have a first name for you. If you will contact Dr. Malash directly, he can respond.
Oh, I've tried. He doesn't respond to my emails.
Well, I see a ton of responses from Dr. Malash. So thank you for your comment. Please try.
Yes, thank you.
Copy, but Dr. Malash has asked me to ask you, so I'm sure he will respond. Thank you for that participation. Okay. Yes, next in the room. Again, just a reminder, your name and municipality first, please.
Dave Kuzmanich, Cherry Hill. I really enjoyed getting some information from the slideshow earlier this evening. I was wondering if that was going to be published to the people who paid for it, which is us, the taxpayers. The other thing, Mr. Mayor and Ms. Stern were talking about the long-term issues that have been going on in this district for years prior to this board. Do we really see anything really happening 5 years down the line? Not necessarily next year, but 5 years down the line if they've been going on so far. And then what do we need to look at as who was here 5-10 years ago where this stuff was going on? So I would like to know if we were going to get a copy of this report. And also one of the pieces of information that I had questions as listening to this slideshow was the suspensions. Do they all happen at a particular school, a particular side of town? How many are repeat offenders? And if they are, what are we doing about the repeat offenders? Are they getting help? So That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. We will return to the line for Ann Einhorn.
Ann Einhorn, Cherry Hill. I would like to go back to your discussion about attendance remotely by board members. In the last 6 weeks, there has been a particular board member that has been attending remotely, and I'm not sure why, but I will emphatically state that each and every one of you was elected by the general public to serve in this position. And now that the COVID restrictions have been lifted, I believe it's your inherent duty to show up at your meetings, particularly if you're the chair of a committee and you're having committee discussion. I do not know what the legalities are. That's why you have Mr. Green to guide you. But yes, I think if there are extenuating circumstances, illness, et cetera, exposure to COVID currently, then indeed you should be allowed to sit at home and do a meeting. But right now, I really think there's an inherent abuse of your current policy. So I hope that the board takes these comments into consideration. You are there to serve the public and our kids, and I would like to see you in person. Thank you.
Thanks. Other comments from the audience or online? No. All right. Oh, Alexis. Alexis, the floor is yours.
Hi, I was there and I left with my co-person.
Alexis, we just
This
need your
is-
name and municipality first.
Yes, I'm so sorry. My name is Alexis Mitchell and I'm in Cherry Hill. And I think my concern is the curriculum that is trying to be presented to our kids, our students. As a taxpayer, I do believe that I have a say in what my child should and should not be exposed to. And what has been presented, and I know that the general consensus is, okay, we don't follow the curriculum verbatim, but the curriculum should not be followed whatsoever if you actually read it and you put yourself in my shoes. I have a 6-year-old, and my main objective is to ensure that he is protected, his innocence and his sanctity. And I will do that. That is the hill I will die on, doing that. I do not condone or consent to the sexualization of our children, the moralization of our community, and the only indoctrinating should be me. And that's it. Whatever I teach my child, I teach my child. The presentation that you guys had earlier was awesome. I thought it was great to go and get an unbiased company to come in and really see where you lack. Well, I also feel like it's just as important to get that roundtable talking to parents that are in charge of voting you in or out. And that's where I stand. This is the first board meeting I have ever attended. And I don't know that I would want to really go to another one. I mean, it's nothing like really listening to the parent. I feel like it's at the end almost of a night, pushing 10 o'clock p.m. And quite frankly, if this is really a survey, this can be some type of survey where, okay, can we be heard in the beginning so that we're not here till 11 o'clock at night? That would be awesome. Just a suggestion. And it's probably how a lot of parents feel. And if you really, really want our feedback, then I think that you should try to listen to us. And I just don't think you're listening. And I think that because the fact that I had to opt my now first grader out of the curriculum that you already present to him it's pretty apparent that you're not really caring about what the voters think. And I will keep that in mind in September or November. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Nicole Nance. And please start with your name and municipality.
Good evening. I would like to
I love those remarks by the parent Alexis, and ditto, I'll say that. I would like to ask
Nicole,
what,
you would just start with your name and
oh,
municipality.
I'm so sorry, Nicole Nance Cherry Hill, I apologize. Nicole Nance Cherry Hill. I ditto what the parent Alexis said. My question is, in the curriculum, this health curriculum that kind of came under the radar for approval during the 2020 pandemic, in there somewhere it talks about it being deemed inappropriate. I believe it's in the health curriculum. So as a superintendent and as a board, you need to deem that curriculum inappropriate for kindergarten through 12th grade. And that is the curriculum that was presented tonight and that so many others have spoken about. Also, I'd like to ask legally, what is the length of a board meeting, a Board of Education meeting? Because I agree with so many, it's so very late. Why don't you put the comments in the beginning and then you all discuss your business? Third, when legally are you supposed to have the actual curriculum posted online or on your website or on the school's website? So moving forward for September school year, when is that curriculum in detail supposed to be posted for the parents, the public, the taxpayers to see? And those are my comments and questions. Thank you.
Thank you. That'll close our public comment number 2 section. I will turn it over to Dr. Malash.
Thank you, Mr. Avadia. I do have a few follow-up comments. Thank you to everybody that took the time to comment this evening. So first, the curriculum that people are referring to, there are new standards that were released, revised New Jersey Student Learning Standards, which are approved and released by the New Jersey Department of Education, which are disseminated to school districts, and which school districts as public schools that we are required to follow. The vote for the standard revisions was that took place at the state level. The revision to the standards is not something that was adopted by the Cherry Hill School Board or developed by the Cherry Hill School Board. We have not yet revised our curriculum. There haven't been changes that have been put into the Cherry Hill curriculum. That will take place this summer. As we do with all of our curriculum, we'll take a look at what is appropriate, age appropriate and developmentally appropriate for the students. What does it look like? We'll have a range of teachers who are involved. There'll be regular ed teachers, there'll be special ed teachers that will be involved. We'll have our librarians, the school nurses will consult because of the topics that are included, and that'll take place during the course of the summer. Much as we do at the family life curriculum, we share the information out with families prior to it being taught to the students. And we expect that just like with family life, where there's an opportunity for parents to express their dissent and not to have their children participate, that we would expect that would probably continue on as part of this because of the revisions that will take place. So all that information will be shared as we share it every year. Parents will get that in the beginning of the year. There's no legal length to a school board meeting. It's what the school board can bear, right? And what they can do. We've had some long ones in the last 20 months. I think the longest one we had ended right around 2 a.m. In August of 2020. But there is no legal time. This is a later one for us. There are some in our area who go to midnight on a regular basis. And it's based on the needs of the board, it's based on the discussion that takes place, but there is no legal time frame for how long it will exist. Talked about the curriculum. The slideshow, Mr. Kuzmanich, it will be posted. We always post them the following day. It will be up on the website. The information, just as it appeared this evening in the slide deck, we'll post that same slide deck tomorrow afternoon. Mrs. Wethington will work with the folks in technology, and they'll get that updated so that folks will be able to see that. Ms. McBride, I know that you have emailed. If there are additional follow-ups, I know that there are a number of people when you've emailed, and that there are a number of people that have followed up directly with you. Feel free, to continue to follow up. We can certainly set time if you'd like to sit down and have a discussion as well. The tennis courts. just to go back with the tennis courts, the tennis courts, the work that was done at East, they're literally brand new from Mrs. Sugar's a number of feet down in the ground. I mean, everything was taken out. The drainage was addressed. Everything from the ground up is brand new, except for the light posts, which our guys, we paid to have painted. Everything else that's on that, in that area is brand new. From the drainage that's underneath to the rocks to the macadam that was laid down, soon to be the colors when they put it up. The fencing is all brand new. Everything on that is absolutely brand new. So that's second public comment. I think that might be it, Mr. Avaya.
All right.
Yeah. Yes.
Great. I'll make a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second? All right, this is Elmore Stratton. All in favor?
Everybody.
Motion carries. Anyone to go?